Yeah, I was surprised with the information I got this morning. What? About Mike
Mike who?
Decker.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
Funny, look how far apart. So they're like
I
good
talked to him
friends.
twice
So that's,
yesterday.
you know, Derek
He
was.
said we spoke to him yesterday. Oh, wow.
So that's his younger son, or no, older son, Nolan.
Unfortunately, it was a little.
They are?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 9th, 2023 meeting of the Dover Area School Board. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mrs. Ullman, could we have the roll call, please?
Mrs. Britton. Here. Mr. Deschaux.
Here.
Mr. Eifert.
Here.
Mr. Emig.
Mr. Emig will not be here tonight due to a work commitment.
Mrs. Herman.
Here.
Mrs. Meese. Here. Mr. Rawhauser.
Here.
Mrs. Whitmer.
Here.
Mr. Wolverton.
Here.
8 present.
Okay, first up are our presentations. We have a curriculum pilot presentation. Dr. Houck and Mr. Young, the floor is yours.
Start and turn it over to you right away. So come on up.
The program that we'd like to pilot is for a core reading program. You are not voting for the purchase of the entire program. You would only be voting to allow us to pilot it with 6 teachers. We have 2 kindergarten teachers and then 1 for grades 1 through 5. There are 2 components to collaborative classroom. There's being a reader, which is the reading portion of the program, and being a writer, which is the writing portion of the program. I'm going to let Mr. Young share with you the being a reader, and then I will step in and share with you being a writer. You do have a folder that I provided for you that has some materials in it that we're going to be referencing. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Young first. He is, by the way, the principal of North Salem Elementary.
All right, very good. Good evening, everyone. And I'll refrain from reading off of the slides. You can kind of take a look at this. I did speak on this back several months ago as we were working through the process and how we got to this point. So I wanted to just briefly kind of bring you up to speed as to why this one has been selected and is being brought to you as we look to trial this for next school year. We started at the beginning of this year starting to collect lists and create a list of resources that are currently out there. Dr. Houck surveyed the county and the IU, I believe it was, and what they're currently using. We looked around outside of our IU, as well as just looking at some of those, large publishers and things like that. So just a cross section of trying to get a list of core resources as we look to move forward in that direction. In December of 2022, we took a look at our list and invited 5 of those publishers to present to our elementary literacy committee. You can see the names of those 5 up there. The committee was very much in agreement as to what those top 2 were. It was about the easiest decision that I've been when you're in a committee. Usually you have opinions all across the board. We had a very clear-cut top 2, and those top 2 then were brought in February. You can see Friday, February 17th. We spent 2 hours with each of those groups, one being Great Minds. It's called Wit and Wisdom. The other is the Collaborative Classroom that is in front of you here this evening. That group then was our elementary curriculum group, so it was not the same group that saw the initial presentation in December. It was a larger group, and that group then listened to these 2 two-hour presentations, and definitely there was one that kind of rose to the top. You can see about 65%, it was about 2/3 that selected or recommended that collaborative classroom be the direction we go between those two. So that's just sort of a very, very quick synopsis of the work that was done throughout this year as we went very broad, narrowed it down, and then sort of have selected this one to really move forward with next year in some specific classrooms and what that looks like. So if we move forward, as Dr. Houck had said, this collaborative literacy program speaks to not just reading, but also speaks to writing. One of the things we've seen here recently as we've done our curriculum writing, as we are constantly evaluating our instructional practices, is that the area of writing is something that we can do better. So we definitely, in addition to the reading component, we want to be looking at that writing component. This resource here in front of you does really an outstanding job in addressing both. So the company is called Collaborative Classroom. On the ELA side, it's called Collaborative Literacy. And then you can select one or the other or both. Of course, they recommend both. As we did our research, they really go seamlessly together. The Being a Reader is really looking at those ELA standards related to reading and literature and nonfiction, all of those kinds of things. And then obviously Being a Writer is more on the lines of the process writing, the publishing a writing narrative, an informational piece, a persuasive piece. And that's really what we want to talk about these two components of collaborative literacy. So I'm going to just jump ahead, and I don't want to read the bullets here. I pulled some of this out of some of the resources that are in front of you. The first thing that we always look for is, what is the evidence behind anything? What is the research behind these things? Is it standing on solid foundation? And when I am looking at this, as well as when our teachers are looking at this, currently in the state of Pennsylvania has a Pennsylvania literacy plan. So the research is embedded in that literacy plan and what is effective literacy instruction. And this checks those boxes. One of the things that we are always looking for, I refer to as the 5 pillars of literacy. It is in our literacy plan for our state, but it's addressing phonological awareness, it's addressing phonics, it's addressing fluency, it's addressing vocabulary, and it's addressing comprehension. And you can see, I think that was the third bullet there, is that strategic and explicit instruction in all of those areas. So this is a program and this is a resource that has all of those things embedded in it. We are currently instructing those areas. If you're familiar with the elementary level, currently we're using something called Foundations that really is specific to the phonics part of reading. Right now we're using something called Haggerty, which is the name of what we're using to teach the phonological awareness component. We are still determining, for those two in particular, we found they're doing a good job, but we want to take a look at this program, and this is going to bring it all together when we talk about that fluency, when we talk about the vocabulary, and certainly the comprehension. The one thing that this Being a Reader does, and personally I like the name of that, it struck me, just Being a Reader, as the title of their resource, because we're not talking just about reading. It's what do readers do? What do active readers do as they're reading a text? What do multiple reads mean? The first time we read something, we're really looking for just general facts and knowledge. But as we do multiple reads and we look at deeper understanding, what does that look like? And then the fact that this is called collaborative is the fact that we really want to be talking about this. This isn't the teacher standing and telling the student what it is they should be thinking from the text, or this is what the main idea is. We want them to draw that out. We want them to turn and talk with their classmates about, well, this is what the text is saying, so I think the main idea happens to be this, and their classmate can agree or disagree, and they can have those conversations, come together as a class to identify those essential skills that we're needing to teach in the area of ELA. You can see the last slide, and this kind of will bring us into the next slides. Solid literacy instruction needs to be taught in a variety of ways. It needs to be taught in a whole group setting. So we're presenting our information, the standards that we're required to teach, the curriculum that we're required to teach in that whole group setting, but we're also following that up in small group settings, differentiated based on student need, meeting those students where they are, providing a variety of texts at different levels, meeting them based on the purpose that they need to be a better reader. So taking that whole group instruction, moving it into small group, 3, 4, 5, no more than 6 students at the table with the teacher working with them in small group, and then certainly some independent practice that then is differentiated based on those students' needs and what it is that we're needing them to do. So if you take a look here, the focus in early literacy, so this slide is really talking about word recognition and fluency in the K-1 and second grade classroom. The first bullet there is talking about what are we looking at in the K-1 classrooms. It's the idea of shared reading, sitting with a large text, reading those pages and having those conversations as a group. Typically that's done like on the carpet as we're doing that with our students. Certainly in kindergarten and into first grade, the letter name instruction, handwriting instruction, the phonological awareness. So phonological awareness is spoken. So if I say the word cat, can you identify the beginning sound in cat? Can you identify the individual sounds in cat? So it's all auditory. Then we move into the phonics, which is written. Can they see the word cat and identify that letter C makes the K sound and the A makes the A sound and so on. So it's taking that oral understanding and putting it into print, decoding, and high frequency words. The next bullet there, 2nd to 5th grade, we're really then driving whole group class word study. It's taking that phonemic awareness and phonics and putting it then into writing. So it's that next step of hearing it, seeing it in print, and now being able to apply it in my writing. I had mentioned about differentiated small group and independent practice. Our language comprehension has to start early on. It starts through that collaborative conversation in kindergarten and works its way all the way up through whole class reading lessons, vocabulary lessons, word study lessons. I had mentioned those differentiated small groups on a variety of texts, and then releasing students to independence based on the skills that they need to practice, coming back to the table the next day, and that cycle just continues as we work to develop our readers. In your packet, these are just some of the things you can take a look at on those pages. I see some people kind of paging through. If you're interested in sort of the what is taught, and obviously this is a very Cliff Notes version of things, just so that you can kind of have a quick look over. You can see that there, pages 7 and 8. What does whole class instruction look like? I talked about that briefly, but you can see some information from the publisher on pages 7 and 8. I had mentioned the small group. You can take a look at that on pages 9 and 10. Lesson recommended time, that's a big one. We are working on both our scope and sequence throughout the entire 180-day school year, but we're also talking about what does a literacy block look like in the amount of minutes each day devoted to, in a kindergarten classroom, phonological awareness, phonics, comprehension, those kind of things, and all the way up into 5th grade, how much time should be spent in any given area. And then you can take a look at a couple sample lessons as well. There is a hyperlink that you should, I believe everyone has access to this slideshow.
It's in their book, the paper copy.
It's in the paper. Oh, perfect. You have a hard copy then of text and the resources that are used with this resource. So that's my part of this, the being a reader, which is only part of a full literacy instructional guide. The other part will be, Dr. Houck will be talking about being a writer. But does anyone have any questions from the reading aspect?
I was looking through this and I see that there's book clubs mentioned. Can you address that at all?
So in this regard, a book club would be pushing into that more independent. It would be both on a small group and an independent side of things, where we have students that are either on or above grade level, where we're working with them at the table, maybe releasing them out to read the next portion of their text, mark the text, write down some of their ideas, and then bringing them back to the table and sharing those with the teacher. So book clubs, they use a couple different names for them, but it would be facilitated through small group and then pushing them off to kind of read on their own the next chapter or the next group of pages, and bringing them back. Sometimes it's the same day to talk about what they read. Sometimes it's the next day to talk about what they read. So it would be that kind of a situation. Does that answer your question? Okay.
I do have some questions.
Sure.
My first question was, I came across, actually, that's not my first question. My first question has to do with the PA literacy plan.
Yeah.
So, obviously, the literacy plan was developed, I don't know how long ago, and they expect, I guess, to use it as a resource for schools to refer to, or is it something they want districts to adhere to?
So the Pennsylvania Literacy Plan is a framework, I would use the term framework, that provides districts with best practices, research-based, both pedagogical practices as well as what really makes up a quality ELA program and curriculum. So it's I would say it's more of a framework for districts to refer to.
Like
it's
a
not a,
suggestion?
what's that?
Like a suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more than a I think it's a highly, it's not a requirement. They're not, there's nothing in there that says you have to do X, Y, and Z, but it's a framework that is rooted in evidence and in research that they're just providing districts to say, here's kind of a compilation of all of the information that's out there.
We're actually going to be writing our own literacy plan, and we'll be using that as a resource. But that's something that we're in the process of doing along with the curriculum writing.
Okay,
It's part of the comprehensive plan that you'll see next.
good. Good to know. Okay, thank you for that. My next question has to do with page 11. I was just looking down through how they select books, and then there's a section that says inclusive and diverse text. So I'm just curious, have you reviewed the books? Have you come across anything that would be controversial?
You have a list of every single book that's used.
I saw that.
Yeah. I also have that I can share with you. It's like 78 pages long, so I didn't print it out. They have little pictures of the book covers that if you'd like to see those titles with the book covers. I looked over, I obviously did not read every one, but I haven't seen any titles or anything that would alert me to be anything controversial.
Okay.
I've also done some research. I've tried to look up. We did find some controversy in some of the other programs that we looked at, but I couldn't find anything in this program. And I asked the sales rep that specific question, and she's not aware of any either.
Okay.
But I did provide for you a list of all of the titles that are
I appreciate
in
that.
there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Because as I was looking through what was attached in an email, it was really hard to see all the books. They only kind of put the binding, and it was so tiny. So my next question has to do with the handwriting. Is this handwriting as in cursive handwriting?
It starts with print, and then it does move into traditional cursive, as they say. There's a piece in there.
So there's a small component of cursive handwriting only in kindergarten and first grade, and then it goes away.
No, kindergarten and first grade would be the print, and then I believe the cursive is in second grade, I think is what it has, but I don't have that paper in front of me, so I'm not 100% sure.
I mean, they don't have handwriting built in this,
On
the
that
graph.
page, I'll have to, I can take.
It looks like it goes away completely after.
I know in kindergarten and first grade, it's part of as you're learning, there's they call them verbal pathways, but as they're instructing both the name of the letter, the sound of the letter, then there's a verbal pathway for, and I don't know the verbal pathway myself, but around, up, and down, or, so that they're associating that with that. I know that is what's connected in the K-1. I'm not as familiar with what that may or may not look like with the cursive.
But they did demonstrate to you in your meetings that there would be a cursive handwriting.
They were talking about the print version. They did
Okay.
not talk explicitly about any type of cursive. So it was really the print and the verbal pathways when being taught a letter. We want to combine that with the grapheme type of thing. That's what they really focused on. And that's probably why you're seeing it just in K1 there.
Okay. Probably would like to get more information in
Sure.
regards to if you
Yeah, I
think
can
there
look.
is cursive.
Yep, yep.
All right, my last question has to do with this, it's how they lay out the week and the
Okay.
instruction and the time frame that's associated with each section. And I'm confused because it'll say days per week and then the time. So if I'm looking at kindergarten, it says independent work, 5 days a week and 30 to 55 minutes. So is that every day of those 5 days, they get 30 to 55 minutes, or are they breaking down the 30 to 55 to each individual 5 days? Does that make sense?
Can I come take a quick look
Yeah.
at what you're looking at?
This section here.
So that's, yeah, here.
So they would divide that up over the 5 days? Or is that every day?
That's during.
Okay.
That's every day, but it would be in combination with they would have multiple things going on at the same time. So like there would be small group going on while these kids are doing some independent, then we'd rotate and I'd pull another group while they're changing. So it would be more station, I think would probably be the best way.
okay.
Yep. And I would say all of those times, this is why we want to trial it. Those are all recommendations, and those are all things that they, what will it exactly look like here? We never have enough time, so we're going to have to figure out exactly what those minutes are. They're giving you a bit of just a recommendation of what they
Okay.
feel like would work. Yeah. I mean, certainly 55 minutes of pure independent time at kindergarten will not be something that we're doing. I can tell you that.
That's why I had to ask.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's all I have.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the writing component. Writing was my absolute favorite thing to teach. I had a lot of professional development in my career in writing, and I was incredibly excited when I saw this particular program because it just reminded me so much of the way that I used to teach writing. So the Being a Writer program, it is part of the ELA block. It is a program that runs K-6, but we're using it K-5 in our elementary buildings. And what I love about it is that it marries writing process where the kids are actually writing with the guided instruction that they need to become better writers. It provides the teachers with the ability to provide instruction in the writing process, which I'll explain in a minute, the craft of writing, which is basically how to make your writing sound really good, different genres, so the different types of writing, and then conventions, which is grammar and spelling and punctuation and all of those conventions of writing. So it teaches and combines all of those things into one wonderful package. So what the research says about teaching writing, this program has, that we should be using a process writing approach. And I'll show you a graph that illustrates what process writing really means. Writing has to be collaborative. You need to read your story to someone else and have them give you feedback. You need to work with other people in order to provide them feedback and get feedback from them. And so that's what research says it makes a really good writing program. Students need what we call mentor texts. So they're going to read books by real authors that, let's say you're trying to teach them how to add details into their writing. Well, we're going to read a story and I want you to look at how this author added details to his writing. Now I want you to go back and do what this author did. So it models for students the way real authors write. We have to teach them explicit writing strategies. We have to give them goals and have them set goals for their writing and then reflect on those goals. And then having kids plan their writing. Too often I've seen where they just write a story and they just start writing on the paper. And that's not what authors do. Authors plan that story out or that piece of writing out. Maybe they make an outline or some type of a graphic organizer before they start writing. So that story is already mapped out in their heads before they start putting it down on paper. And what the research says about improving writing, again, this program has. We have teacher and peer conferences, revision conferences, and editing conferences. So I'm going to read my story with the teacher, and we're going to talk about how to make it better. I'm going to read my story to a peer, and we're going to talk about how to make it better. And then we have editing conferences with the teacher, where we sit down and we look at, where did we misspell words? Where did we have incorrect punctuation? Where do we need to add paragraphs? Those types of conventions for writing. It is really important that we get kids to write for real audiences, not just writing for their teacher. And so that's, again, where the peers come in. And we set up, they can write to the principal, they can write to their parents, but having them write for real audiences and for real purposes, and not just because it's an assignment that's getting a grade. Student self-assessment, really important that students be able to proofread their own writing, to be able to reflect on how good of a job they did with their writing. And then regular periods of writing. And part of that independent time, by the way, can be where the kids are writing while their teacher is meeting with a group and they're waiting for their turn. So that's built in there. And then a choice of writing topics. So we may ask a kid, we're going to write an opinion piece, but I'm going to let you pick the topic. You get to write about what's important to you, what's meaningful to you, and what you are interested in and know a lot about. So the genres that this program teaches is narrative writing, which is basically writing a story. In the younger grades, we encourage them to write a story about something that they've done, your favorite birthday party, a trip that you took, something that they know about, before they start writing completely made-up stories. We have them write nonfiction or informational stories, write a story about what you learned about penguins, write a story or a list of instructions, like the explanatory, and definitely opinion writing, where we ask them to express their opinions on things. Poetry, they're going to write some poems. We've done that for centuries, right? And then, of course, writing some explanations. I need you to write to explain how you make a peanut butter sandwich kind of a thing, so that they learn how to write directions. So a typical daily lesson has 3 components. The getting ready to write would be the part where the teacher instructs. Sometimes that could be where we read the mentor text. This program encourages teachers to write in front of kids so that they model how to start a story. So I'm going to write about my best birthday, and here's how I'm going to start it, and then we do it together so that it models for them. Now I want you to go back to your seats and you start writing about your favorite birthday. And this is where the lessons on punctuation and grammar and spelling and all of that come in. And then, of course, the writing time. While the kids are writing, the teacher, I'm going to meet with individual kids or groups of kids to read their stories and help them to revise it to make it better, help them to edit, to make it correct with grammar and punctuation. And then the sharing and reflecting. Sometimes we have what's called an author's chair, where their kids are going to sit and it's their turn to share their story with their classmates. So that's a typical lesson in this writing program. So in the K-2 writing program, we have that guided writing practice. That's where I'm going to write with you. We're going to write a story together. We use mentor texts. In the really little ones, we'll draw. Sometimes they draw their story first before they try to write it. Sometimes all they can do is label it. And then we encourage them to write a sentence or 2 about their story. So we encourage them to write as many letters, words, or simple stories that they know how to do. And we sometimes might give them sentence starters. Then when we go into grades 3 and 5, that's when we really start to hone in on the writing process, on the craft and the genres and the skills and the conventions of writing. So this is what I mean when I say writing process. The writing process starts with planning, where I plan what I'm going to write. I will create a draft, and then I revise and edit my draft. And then once it's revised and edited, and it's as error-free as I know how to get it, then we publish it. Then we might make a little book, or we might send the letter that we wrote, or make it the final copy of it. And then we start all over again by planning the next story. So that's what I mean by writing process. So there is a component that's called social and academic development. And I looked through all the lessons that I could find to see what exactly is this social development all about. And I do have a printout that I can share with you what those skills are. But this is what they mean when they say social and academic development. Teaching self-regulated learning, like how to budget your time. That's what self-regulated means. What happens when you get writer's block? If you're tired of writing, how to look at something else and then come back to it. That's what that means. It's all academic skills. Students listen respectfully to the thinking of others and share their own. If we're going to ask them to read stories to one another, we have to teach them how to do that respectfully. Students working in a responsible way, not wasting time, taking care of your materials. Students expressing interest in and appreciation for one another's writing. So when somebody has read their story to you, how can you give them positive feedback and how can you give them constructive feedback? We've got to teach kids how to do that. How to make decisions and solve problems respectfully. Students act in fair and caring ways, and students help one another to improve their writing. All of those things are within the context of the writing performance. We're not talking about other areas. We're not talking about playground. We're talking about when you're working together in a writing classroom, what are the skills that you need to know? So a couple of the other social skills they teach are participating in partner work, following classroom procedures, using turn to your partner and think, pair, share, speaking clearly, listening to others, reflecting on your behavior, taking responsibility for learning, acting considerately towards others, giving your full attention to the people who are speaking, using discussion prompts, how to start a conversation, ask others questions about their writing, share partners' thinking with the class, agree and disagree in a caring way, reaching an agreement before making decisions, discussing and solving problems that arise while working with others, handling materials responsibly, sharing materials fairly, asking for and receiving feedback about your writing, and giving feedback in a helpful way. So that's what this program is talking about when it talks about social and academic development. So what's included? This is on pages 9 to 11. This is what we get. If we purchase the program, this is what each of the pilot teachers will be getting. I'm not going to read that to you. It's a lot of stuff. So let's talk a little bit about the cost. So I'm comparing with you the 3 programs that we looked at. I want to remind the board that the reason we are looking at a program is because the one we are currently using is sunsetting. It's dying, it's going away. So we have no choice but to look at something else. So as you can see, among the 3 that we looked at, Collaborative Classroom is significantly cheaper than the other 2. It would be an upfront cost of $272,000. Plus, there's a $35,000 a year for the consumables, which is the workbooks. However, those are printable. You can download them from the internet. What we don't know yet is how much of that will we need, and will it be cheaper for us to download what we need than it would be to purchase the materials? We won't know that until we pilot it. And that's a conversation I'll be having with the pilot teachers. If they're using a ton of those consumables, then it might be cheaper to purchase it than pay for the paper and the printers. Or it might be cheaper for us to print it. We'll look at that. But as you can see, the other 2 are more for 6 years, and we're getting it cheaper for 7 years. Now, the thing that shocked me that I didn't know, because back in the day, they gave you all of the materials for free to pilot. They don't do that anymore. You have to pay for the materials if you want to pilot them. Lucky for us, we still have some ESSERS money for learning loss, and I believe that this would qualify under ESSERS. So I am planning on using ESSERS money to pay for it. This is what we're purchasing is a teacher package and a classroom package with all of the materials that are necessary to teach the program for 2 kindergarten teachers and then 1 teacher in grade 1 through 5. And then the reading library is optional, but I don't know how much we would need it. Since we have ESSERS money, I think I want to use it to at least purchase 1. It is exactly what it says it is, a reading library, so that when kids have to pull books to read independently, they have some to choose from. If we purchase 1 for each grade level, we can take a look at it, and then we can decide whether or not we need that when we purchase the program as a whole. So I am asking to use ESSERS money to be able to go ahead and buy it so we can take a look at it and see what it looks like. And then we'll at least have it for good for the teachers to share amongst themselves in the grade level. So questions about the writing program?
I have a question about the library you were just talking about. Is that like an extra piece, or are those the books that the teachers will use within the lesson?
It is an extra piece.
Okay. All right. And also writing, I loved it too. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was like the one, you could find out so much about a child with the way they write. And I'm not talking about just their ideas. I'm talking about how they put things down on paper. I think this is wonderful.
And what this does for us that we don't currently have is a consistency in writing, because we don't have any program for writing. Teachers are really doing the best they can with what they do, and it could look very different from classroom to classroom and from grade to grade. So this is a very step-by-step way to get writing back into our curriculum. And I wanted to point out where it says 447 or 558. 447 is without the reading library, 558 is with the reading library. Again, that's not the decision that we're making today. Today, we're making this decision about being able to pilot this program.
Can you go back to that last slide quick, please,
Sure.
Rena? So the 35,000 plus a year, will that be necessary if you choose to just do a download? Do you know what that how that would affect that cost if you just
Yeah,
do the download?
It would be the 272.
So they said that the downloads come with the initial cost.
No, the initial cost is 272,
Yeah.
and that gives you all of the consumables for the first year. So starting year 2, we're going to be paying $35,000 a year for the consumables. And what it would be is I would probably sit down with Miranda and say, okay, here's what would it cost the district to pay for the paper to be able to print these, as opposed to buying it. Honestly, sometimes it's cheaper to buy it, but we would see.
So that's where I'm trying to figure out. So if you found out it would be cheaper for us to use the downloads and print, would that 35,000 a year go away?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so I have a couple other questions. So
Okay.
in regards to assessments, do you know much as far as their presentation they gave? Do they use actual, like, say, rubrics
Yes.
or some type
There-
of assessment?
There is a unique rubric for each genre. So there's a rubric for narrative writing, there's a rubric for explanatory writing, there's a rubric that's specific to that genre, because you're going to be looking for different things in different pieces of writing.
And that's across the grades? That's
Yes.
not just for one grade? Okay.
Correct.
And
And they
then-
also give you samples, because they look at samples and they have you kind of score them so that you can sort of practice using the rubric.
Okay. My other question is, as I'm sitting here you're talking about them doing the writing, bringing it to the teacher, doing revising, editing, and I'm picturing them handwriting on a piece of paper. So are they going to be doing that? Because I realize now most kids use tablets and things, so are they typing? Are they actually writing?
Honestly, I think that would be up to the teacher. I think the way the program has them doing it, it's in paper. They're writing on paper. But that would be up to the teacher how they want to do that. I always had them write it on paper, and then their final copy they produced on the computer. But it can go either way. That's really a teacher discretion kind of thing.
Okay.
And it could be different for different kids, too. There could be some kids where we want them on paper, and then others might work best on the computer.
The final question I have is, and maybe you guys haven't even discussed this or figured it out, but I'm just curious if you would be able to get some parental input on how they see their child using the program, developing throughout the program, what, things the parent might be seeing
So
they
our
like
plan,
or don't like,
Yeah.
and, just extra input.
yeah, our plan is actually to inform the parents up front at the beginning of the school year that we're piloting this program, and yeah, we absolutely would want to hear from them throughout the year about what they're seeing, for sure.
So you said 6 teachers, correct?
Correct.
So that's dispersed amongst the elementary buildings?
Yes, there is at least one teacher from every building, and then one from every grade level. And honestly, like I said before, I think I told you, I would like to do more, but it costs money. I have to pay. Every additional teacher is going to be another couple $1,000s. So I wanted to kind of keep it to a reasonable amount of money to pilot.
So throughout the year when they do, say, their department meetings, like for instance, like the reading teachers or just those 5th grade teachers get together, would they share how things are going and discuss with others to decide?
Yes, they will be meeting with with Mr. Young and myself, actually on a regular basis, because we'll be talking to them. I do plan on having them meet as a group of piloting teachers to talk about how it's going on, and then I'm sure their colleagues are going to want to know, and so they will most certainly be sharing that, yes. And I'm also providing them with as much professional development as they need, because they're going to have to turn around and help me train the other teachers. That's part of what a pilot is for.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Anything
And
else?
trust me, that's what you do. When you hate a program, you all complain in your grade level, or if you love a program, you boost it up. So they'll know, their whole group, team will know.
Okay. I do have samples of the writing program for grades 2 and 5, if anybody wants to see them and look through them. The reading, I would have to get you I don't have the hard copy samples, but I can get you online to look at those if you want to see them. I think I'm up next, right?
You're up next again. Any other questions for Dr. Hauk on that? Okay, comprehensive plan.
Okay, so I have some updates for you on the comprehensive plan. If you recall, I presented to you, and I'm going to review it very quickly, the comprehensive plan that was written by me with the help of the steering committee. At the time, I told you that there were going to be some new requirements added to the professional development, to the comprehensive plan in the professional development piece. When I presented this to you, I didn't know what they were. So I have found out, and I'm ready to share those with you. Originally, the comprehensive plan was supposed to be due at the end of March. They extended the deadline until October so that we could get these new requirements in it. So my job right now is to get stakeholder engagement. So you're not voting on anything today. The comprehensive plan isn't ready. What I'm asking for is for your input and the input of anybody in the audience or who's listening online. That's the goal here today. So we have our new mission and vision statement, which will go live once you board approve it. The mission is to educate, empower, and inspire all students to become contributing citizens in an ever-changing world. And the vision is Dover Area School District students will achieve success by engaging in rigorous and relevant instruction, exploring a broad range of opportunities, and discovering unique pathways to a productive future through the supportive collaboration of the entire school community. And that was written, it was a group effort by the steering committee. I want to review with you some of the strengths that we identified in our district that help inform this comprehensive plan. Our language arts, math, and science scores are consistently above the state average in almost every single grade. I will show you a chart of that in a minute. Our basic and below basic achievement groups were generally blue and green in math and ELA PVAS, and basically what that means is they have exceeded the growth standard that is set for how much growth we expect them to see in a given year. Our high school graduation rate is above the state average, and it exceeds the goal, the yearly goal that PDE sets for us for our graduation rate. Our industry-based learning scores is higher than state average and has also exceeded the performance standard that was given to us. Overall, the economically disadvantaged student group made growth similar to the all group. That's another thing they look at is the other categories of students that they want to make sure that they are growing at the same rate that the all student group is growing. So those are among our strengths. I made a chart that shows you that we are in every grade but one above the state average in both language arts and math and in science. We exceeded it by double digits in some areas. So that's work that we can really be proud of, but that doesn't mean we don't have improvement. We can always make improvement, right? I would like to see us to be way above the state average, not just above. But we are exceeding the state average, and that's something that we can be very, very proud of. The other thing is our building score. The middle school ranked 5th among the 19 school districts in York County. So that's most definitely something that we can be proud of. And our high school was ranked 8 out of 17 of the high schools in York County. There are more middle schools because some districts have like an intermediate and a middle. The configuration is all different. I do not compare elementaries because those configurations are wildly different. Some are K-3 buildings, some are K-5 buildings, some are 3-4 buildings. They're just all over the place. So it's not really a fair comparison. But our middle school kind of shows you what is happening at our elementary. So we have a lot of strengths and a lot to be proud of. Some of the challenges that we identified is, despite that our scores do continue to grow, they're still not quite where we are pre-pandemic. And these are our scores for the 21-22 school year. that we're talking about. Our math, we're not quite meeting the growth standard in all areas. Our proficient and advanced, even though they're advanced, they didn't grow as much as we'd like them to grow. Math is lower than ELA or science, so it needs some attention. Our rigorous courses of study is below the state average, so we want to make sure we're getting more kids to enroll in rigorous courses. Our growth for students with disabilities is below the all-student group, so we want to work with our students with disabilities to kind of expand their growth a little bit. And the frequent turnover in both building and district administration has resulted in a lot of inconsistency and lack of follow-through. It takes years to put something into place, and when you keep changing and changing and changing, things just don't materialize. And our curriculum is incomplete and not guaranteed and viable, and we've been working on that, as you know, and you have some you have to approve today. Or you can approve, excuse me. You don't have to, you can. So here are the priorities that I have.
Question.
Yes.
Back on that chart with the challenges, when we talk about the proficiency percentages, things like that, and being below the pre-pandemic levels, how does that compare to other districts? You know, I'm assuming the pandemic has had a negative impact on everybody.
Absolutely.
Is everybody basically saying the same thing when it comes to that first area? How's that?
Absolutely,
right,
which is why it's important for us to look at this, which is how we're doing compared to the state average. Scores plummeted all across the state because of COVID. The school shutdowns and the online learning just didn't work, period. And so, yes, we are seeing that. And again, when you look at our middle school and high school compared to the rest of the county, they've experienced the same thing. So, yes, that's why.
Thank you.
Everybody experienced that.
Thank you.
So the priorities for the comprehensive plan are, we're going to write a comprehensive literacy plan, and the PA literacy plan will be something we use as a guide, but we do write our own. That will be unique to us. We need to increase student achievement in mathematics. I'd like to see our math scores get to where our reading and science scores are. We will commit to high standards of teaching and learning. We are going to encourage AP enrollment, dual enrollment, and CTE credentialing program participation. And then we, of course, will develop a guaranteed and viable curriculum that you are already starting to see. There were other requirements that were already a part of what we are required to do. So we are required to do a yearly training on trauma-informed care. We've been doing that for a number of years now. So this is stuff we've already been doing. It's not anything new. Every 5 years, we have to do suicide prevention and bullying recognition training. McKinney-Vento is the homeless law. So we need to make sure that teachers are aware, all staff members are aware of the laws regarding homeless students. We have to do safety drills. We have to do something with language and literacy acquisition, so that's reading and writing. And then teaching diverse learners in inclusive settings, that it refers to students with disabilities. And so we've been doing that as well. So here are the new components. There are 3 of them. What I am trying to do is to not have to add anything new and to try to do what we're already doing and have what we're already doing fit into these 3 categories. And I want to share with you my plan for doing that. So on April 23rd, Chapter 49 was amended to include this law that requires PDE to identify competencies and develop standards for educator training in these 3 categories: professional ethics, structured literacy, and culturally relevant and sustaining education. Now, keep in mind, this is for teacher training. This is not something we're required to deliver to kids, obviously. This is just what we're required to put into our teacher training programs. Colleges are going to be required to put this into their teacher training programs, and then we have to do it as well. So let's take a look at these 3. Professional ethics, we're required to do that for all teachers and at new teacher induction. We already do that. Mr. Pratt actually has been the one to deliver that, at least to the last 2 years that I have been here. He comes to induction, and he has delivered to the teachers a workshop, I guess we call it, on professional ethics. We also, every year at the beginning of the year, review with teachers our policies regarding professional ethics, behavior, those types of rules. Already do it, not a problem. It's there, we've got that one. Structured literacy program, also not a problem. Science reading, reading and writing, all of that that's already in my comprehensive plan, that's going to check off both boxes. It's going to check off the comp plan box, and it's going to check off this box. The third one is culturally relevant and sustaining education. I would like to focus this on English language learners, students with disabilities, and students living in poverty. I will tell you that the Pennsylvania Department of Education, when they passed this along for the webinar, recognized and said that they anticipate that this may cause some controversy with school boards. They know it's going to do that. They told me they would give me talking points. I haven't gotten the talking points. So I'm presenting it to you as I know it to be. So it's the overall definition is education that ensures equity for all students, seeks to eliminate systemic, institutional, racial, and cultural barriers that inhibit the success of all students in the Commonwealth, particularly those who have been historically underrepresented. And I highlighted that for a reason. Culturally relevant and sustaining education encompasses skills for educators, including but not limited to approaches to mental wellness, trauma-informed approaches to instruction, technological and virtual engagement, cultural awareness, and emerging factors that inhibit equitable access for all students in the Commonwealth. I have given you in hard copy in your folders a list of all of the competencies related to all three of those: structured literacy, professional ethics, and culturally relevant and sustaining education. My plan is, when I see historically underrepresented, again, my plan is to focus on English language learners, because we have students in our classrooms right now who don't speak English. A lot of them are Spanish, but we also have gotten a lot of Ukrainian students this year. And that's really challenging for a teacher to have a student that doesn't speak any English. And our teachers could certainly use a little more support and a little professional development in how to meet the needs of those kids. Students with disabilities. It is something that we already do, but Mrs. Geyer and I have already talked about how our teachers need a little bit more help with how, when you have a kid with a learning disability in your regular ed classroom, getting a regular curriculum, how do you help them? And then just more of an awareness of the barriers that students who live in poverty face when they're trying to access our education. So those are the three populations of kids that I would like to write into the comprehensive plan. So CRSE is required for the induction program this coming year, and for professional development sometime within the 3 years of this comprehensive plan. Professional ethics, the same thing. And structured literacy. Here's the interesting thing about structured literacy. Anybody who holds a K to 6 in their certificate, regardless of what job they're performing, has to be trained in structured literacy. That means Dr. Cartwright will need to be trained. Our high school principal has K to 6 in her certificate. She's going to need to be trained. Anyone, regardless of the job that they're doing right now, if they have K to 6 in their certificate, they will need to be trained in structured literacy. So that's a new requirement there. Questions, comments, input?
I have a question.
Yes.
All right, so in regards to these Pennsylvania Department of Education guidelines, so my question would be, how does this get presented to the teachers in professional development? Do they get handed this?
No.
Okay.
Oh, here's another thing I forgot to tell you, by the way. There are 3 school districts in Pittsburgh who are filing a lawsuit against culturally relevant and sustaining education. So I don't know where that will land. I don't know if Mr. Pratt knows anything about that. He can share with us. But they have given us no guidelines regarding what the PD needs to look like or how long. All they said was, it can't be 15 minutes. That's literally all they said. So we get to decide what that looks like. And again, my plan is to focus on English language learners, students with disabilities, and students living in poverty.
I guess my concern would be, would a teacher say, why didn't we get the full training? You know, like something like...
Well, there are trainings that exist for teachers who want to take them, and I would encourage them to go ahead and do that. But we have very precious little professional development time in our district.
Right.
We don't have a lot. So I just I wouldn't have the time to devote hours to any one of these three things. But certainly if there's a teacher who's interested in that, they can certainly pursue that.
So when they say collaborate with families and communities through authentic engagement practices, what does that mean?
We
What does
already do
look
that.
like?
We do family engagement nights, we do parent evenings, we do that type of thing. And again, they're not going to, I'll show you, you get to approve the comprehensive plan. So anything I write into it, you'll be able to see. But it's not that, the comprehensive plan is just gonna be, you know, when am I gonna provide it, who's going to receive it, what's the topic gonna be? So it's not that specific.
It's a good one.
Yes, yes.
You indicated that there are kids that don't speak English. Can you tell me roughly how many in the district and what grade levels?
They're definitely K to 12. I have a document that tells you exactly when I sit down, I will look it up, and then I can come back and tell you. But I don't know off the top of my head. But I can pull it up. It won't take long.
I have a couple questions. The mission statement, can we go back to that
Sure.
first slide?
Oops.
So the last couple words there, the supportive collaboration of the entire school community.
Yes.
So does the comprehensive plan like detail how we're going to achieve the mission and vision? Is that kind of the point? Like, so that's the overall.
Not specifically, but this is what we were supposed to have in our mind as we're developing that plan.
Okay.
But that's just something that the steering committee felt strongly that we need the support of our community, our parents, our business owners. And we do a lot of that, especially at the high school level with our OAC meetings, our occupational advisory committee meetings, with our parent advisory committee meetings, our PTO meetings. That's something we already do it, but it's not specifically in the plan.
Okay, because that was going to be my question. So how does our comprehensive plan meet that expectation that we're going to collaborate with the entire school community? So that's just.
And that would be my response. I can't remember if that's actually in the plan, but that's my response.
Okay.
Like those are things that we're already doing.
Okay, good.
And I would like to continue to do and do it more often, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a strength is our co-curricular and extracurricular activities. I think maybe that could be added, like our DECA and FFA and added as a strength on our on one of our
absolutely.
slides. That's just kind of my personal opinion. But your steering committee, did anybody talk about one of our weaknesses being any disciplinary issues, or do we not see that as a weakness in our district?
I see it as being very typical of what we see in schools. Okay. I don't think our discipline issues are any worse than any other schools. In fact, in some cases, they're better.
Okay, I just wanted to ask because I know we talk a lot about how we're rewarding students in our reward systems and stuff like that. So
Yep.
I didn't know if that was a solution to any disciplinary issues, or if it's just an average thing, then that's fine. I just wanted to ask.
It was
if
not
we thought
something
it
that-
was something that should be a weakness.
I'm so
that we
sorry to
address.
interrupt you there.
Okay.
No, our teachers did not bring that up, and they were a part of
Okay.
the steering committee, and that was not something that they identified as being a weakness.
Okay. What about the steering committee saying anything about a weakness being, and I don't know a comprehensive plan. This is kind of the first time I'm, being involved or seeing it. So I don't really know what it's supposed to encompass. But one of our weaknesses being our sports and getting our coaches and getting our teams and our student athletes and that kind of thing. Is that?
That is not part of the comprehensive
not,
plan.
okay.
The comprehensive plan typically focuses mostly on academics
the education part
and
of
a
it.
little bit on culture and, just the climate, I think, of our schools is what I'm saying.
So you don't think that the sports affect climate or education?
I do, but there's no place in the comprehensive
plan
plan
for that.
for extracurriculars. No, it's not mentioned in there anywhere.
Okay. And then you, one slide said something about CTE credentialing program.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
That's our CTE program, you know, how they all
Right.
culminate in a NOCTI.
Yeah.
Actually got a really good score for that, but it also counts as a rigorous course of study. And so we just want to increase the enrollment in
the CTE
program. Yes. So making sure that we're doing a better job of informing our 8th graders of what is available to
Totally
them
agree, yeah.
and informing our parents of what is available. Our middle school parents are the ones, I think they should be our target audience, along with their students, so that they know what's available to them at the high school so they can start steering their kids into it.
Yeah. So on that slide where it says CTE credentialing program, is that what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking
Informing the 8th grade students and their families that this is an option when they get to high school.
And even our current high school, because we do have
Yeah,
some programs that for our 2 years for juniors and seniors. So basically, I want to increase the enrollment in our AP classes, in our dual enrollment course offerings at the colleges, and our CTE credential programs. I think we can get more kids in there.
Yeah, and I think that's great for our students. If they don't want to go on to further education, they can leave high school with a certification and they can present that to an employer.
Right.
And yeah, I'd be all over that.
And in my former life, I got more buy-in when I talked to the parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. And keep in mind, you will be getting the entire comprehensive plan to read, and I'll give it to you in plenty of time to be able to have lots of time to read it. It's not due till October. This is really just for me to update you because I promised you I would, and to get your input on the new requirements.
Okay, any other questions for Dr. Hauk? Okay, I think you're done now.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you for all that information tonight. Okay, this brings us to our first public comment period. It's a 30-minute period for items on or off of the agenda, 3 minutes per speaker. So if you have anything you would like to comment on, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing nobody on the move, Board President's communication. We did have a brief executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss a legal matter related to the completion of Intermediate Avenue. And then I would also like to ask Dr. Hauk, if you could share your presentation electronically with the board. I think it's important for us to have the numbers related to the scores and how things are doing compared to the state averages. There's a lot of misinformation that's been spread over time, a lot of misconceptions out there in the community. I think it would be key for us when we're asked about that to be able to have numbers right in front of us to share. So, okay, great, thank you. Okay, that brings us into the discussion tonight for our consent action items that we'll be voting on next week, next Tuesday. So we'll start to go down through the agenda here to discuss these items. The first thing on there is the appointment of a board treasurer for a one-year term that begins July 1st of 2023 and runs to June 30th. This is required under school code that we have a board treasurer for the district. So next week we will be entertaining a motion for somebody to serve as the board treasurer for that term. So if any of you have a burning desire to take on that role, let me know, and we'll get you on there as a motion to be approved as the treasurer for that period of time. With that, we'll move into Dr. Cartwright. You can talk about the rest of the agenda here, starting with 502.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the graduating class list is self-explanatory, but we'll certainly take questions on that if you have them.
Do you have the exact number? It didn't say in the...
I could count them, but no, I don't have a number. I haven't been given one, and I did not count them. It's usually around 229 or something like that. Our average class is about 225.
Graduation is June 3rd?
Saturday, June 3rd at 9 a.m.
9 a.m.,
yes.
okay.
You will see 5.03 is a revision to a field trip request that you approved in February. The group is going to Six Flags, and they just found out last week that Six Flags is closing like at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock. So the kids decided they wanted to go to King of Prussia to shop for a couple extra hours and eat dinner. So this is changed to extend their time and not come home so early, because teenagers don't want to be home with their parents. I have one, so I know that. So that was already approved, just a revision, a little bit of a schedule change there. There are a couple of other field trip requests. Is Mr. Benton still around? I think, were you planning on talking about a couple of those?
Good evening. Yes, the 2 field trips that you see there for Skills USA, that is Alexi Wells that just was nominated as state officers for Skills USA. She's one of 8. The first field trip is June 4th through the 6th. That's for her and the advisor to go to Penn State to start her training as Pennsylvania state officer. The next field trip is at Atlanta, Georgia, June 16th through the 24th. She will be representing the state of Pennsylvania and Dover Area School District at the National Skills USA Conference, where she will receive more training, plus do her duties as a state officer. So that's where those 2 field trips just came up for. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Cheerleading camp, I think, may be self-explanatory. And then I think Dr. Hauk, she's on the spot tonight. There are several items that she will address.
All right, where are we?
Curriculum.
Curriculum. So you have library and science curriculum that was finished. Again, same story, the KUDs that are there that really spell out what will be taught in those courses. So give you some time to look over those between now and next week. Please let me know if you have any questions about any of those. I'm sorry, I lost my spot here. Where are we next?
The pilot program.
The pilot program, well, I think I've told you everything you need to know about that, unless you have any other questions for me regarding that.
Dr. Hauk, you mentioned that that's funded with the ESSER's money.
Correct.
And that you would like to have more teachers involved in that. Do we have additional ESSER's money to be able to include, or are we trying to hold some of that back in reserve for something else? Or I just want to make sure we're not shortchanging ourselves,
right,
with this, because it's an important investment. I mean, you look at what it costs in total, it's a significant amount of money. So
right.
If it's better tested by more people, should we spend a couple more dollars with that?
I do have some money. We have until 2024 to spend it, and there is some that I could afford, yes, to purchase more. The thing that you want to keep in mind, though, is, and it's not likely that we won't choose the program, but if we do, that money kind of, in essence, goes to waste because we won't use that program. I really don't think that's going to happen, but
right.
There is a chance, and I want you to be aware that there is a chance of that happening. So.
Okay. Thank you.
So the revision. So when you approved this last month at a price of, I think, $107 a book or something like that. And when we went to pay the bill, the publishing company said, well, that's not the right price. And we said, well, that's the price you gave us. And we showed them the email or the correspondence that had that particular price on. And he said, oh, I made a mistake. And I said, well, I gotten approved by the board. What can you do for us? And he basically, after a lot of back and forth, said nothing. They said, the price that I'm giving you now is the discounted price. So they were not willing to honor their first quote. It's not a huge difference. I think it's a difference of $1,000 or something like that. But I needed you to know that that's what happened there. It's actually, I think, $170 instead of $107. So he apparently transposed 2 of the digits. Yeah. But it is the textbook that the teacher prefers. It is the AP, I think that's the one that's on your desk right now, from macro and microeconomics. And so it is the one that she wants. There is a chance that we could try to purchase it through like Amazon for a little cheaper if we search for it. But I do need you to approve it at the most expensive cost, which is through the publisher. Questions there? Okay. I have another textbook that if you have questions, I may defer to Mr. Benton. The computer programming teacher does not currently have a textbook at all. He is trying to pull resources from wherever he can, and he would like to have an actual textbook to use for computer programming. So this is the textbook that I am happy to share with anybody who wants to read about computer programming. But he is asking that we purchase just one classroom set so that all of his classes would share that book. It wouldn't be something that they would be taking home, or we'd have to buy more copies. So he's willing to have that as a classroom set. So questions about that?
Just a question on textbooks in general. Are any of them being provided in electronic form now at this point, and is that a cheaper option for us to go with? You know, our students have their devices. Could we be providing these materials electronically versus?
Sometimes they do. It's usually not cheaper. Do you know, Mr. Benton, if this one is?
It's more expensive because it's a yearly cost.
Okay.
Just buying 30 class set.
Do you want to come on?
We're purchasing just a class set to have in the classroom. To go online, it's a yearly cost, and it would triple the cost over time, because I'd have to purchase it every year then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, interestingly enough, years ago, we thought online textbooks would become a real big thing, and they are typically more expensive, unbelievably.
Yeah.
And textbooks are expensive to begin with.
So the Habitudes is a program that we are using at the Dover High School Middle School. We've been using it all year. It is up for renewal. Keep in mind that is, we are using the 7% set-aside ESSERS funds that must be spent on social emotional learning. Again, I'm not allowed to spend it on anything else. Habitudes is a program that talks about leadership. And it teaches kids some of the skills that are common among leaders, like responsible decision-making, self-awareness, recognizing your strengths, self-management, stress management, relationship skills, engagement, self-awareness, self-efficacy, impulse control. I have plenty of documentation if you want to see what those lessons look like. The kids watch a very short video clip. It takes about 20 minutes total. At the high school, we have students who deliver it, so it's not something the teachers deliver. Students have done that. And at the middle school, they do take 20 minutes. I don't know if it's once a week. It's probably not more than that to go through these lessons.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
In regards to Habitudes, you said the SEL money, ESSERS money, has to be spent on that.
Yes.
Have we gotten any feedback on Habitudes?
No, not positive nor negative. We've gotten no negative feedback and no complaints.
So is it possible to do some type of survey quick with the kids to know if they feel like this is helping them, if it's worth reinstating and using that SEL money?
I'm not.
I can tell you from my daughter has taken part in Habitudes over the past. She's a junior this year, and she has enjoyed it. She seems to like it. Hasn't had any complaints. Her friends also seem to enjoy it and find it helpful. So for what that's worth, I know, and they're all junior, senior age, so they've been through it. I think for 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah.
My daughter's a sophomore, and she does it as well, so her and her friends do it as well.
But what feedback have you had from her on it?
They just did a lesson, I would say, to a group of students,
Yep.
I think about 3-4 weeks ago, and they went in, taught a lesson, and they said the students actually engaged with them. I know they've done pep rallies, they've done a lot of interactive events with the kids, and they said all of the rallies went really, really well.
Yeah, and the kids go in and do the instruction themselves.
Right.
It's not a
Correct.
teacher.
Yeah.
Which they really like. The peer-to-peer interaction seems to be something that they really like.
And the meetings are normally at like 7 a.m. on couple times a month sometimes.
I'm curious for feedback as a whole, because I actually heard the opposite, that a child asked their parent to come pick them up, they didn't want to sit through it again. So when you hear that and you hear alternative views, I'd kind of like some kind of synopsis from the district on whether or not that's even worth
I
it.
mean, honestly, I trust my teachers to give me that feedback. I hesitate to survey kids for everything that we want to try to do. It's a lot of kids, and we're asking them a lot of questions, and the time it takes to survey them, I'm not sure that I find that useful. I prefer to kind of take the input of our teachers as to whether or not they want to continue it.
So is Habitudes at the high school
And middle
level
school.
only?
High school and middle school, yes. And we also don't have, our principals aren't checking on the teachers to see if they're doing this. So, teachers they do have some flexibility. We want to see that they're doing it, but it's not like we're doing Habitude checks. So if they can't fit it in that week, then they'll do it the next week.
Was it always intended that the children were going to deliver the lessons?
That was a decision that the high school made, to do it that way. Yeah, the high school administration along with the teachers.
The middle school doesn't.
They do
it
not.
the same way.
No.
They do it with
The teachers deliver it at the middle school.
I just have to ask, what is the $240,000 used for? Like, I know it's not district money, it's ESSER's funds, but what is it?
It's not
being-
240. It's
I'm sorry, that's Edmentum.
yes.
Sorry.
This one's only 3,000. Yeah, it's not $200,000. It's
Edmentum's my next question.
yeah, and I can share Edmentum with you too. It's about $3,000. And
So what do they need the money, like?
that's the price for the curriculum, just like you have to pay for this textbook.
So there's resources that they pull the lessons from?
Everything is there. And I did a lot of screenshots. I can share the folder with you if you want to look at it and see exactly what's being taught. I'm happy to do that.
It's like 35 for each building.
Other questions? Okay, so Edmentum, we actually asked them if we could pay for Edmentum by users. And it ended up, we found out that it is actually cheaper by about $40,000 cheaper if we bought it district-wide, so that we can use it anywhere in the district. There are two components that we are paying for. One is ExactPath. ExactPath is what we use to assess students in math. It also allows students, it kind of tests them in the beginning, and then when they get on, and it gives them their own learning path. So it's individualized for each kid. It is on the computer. Teachers will often use it as independent work while they're meeting with small groups. I've seen teachers who use it sort of as their closure for the lesson. The kids just get on ExactPath. We get all kinds of data about their performance from ExactPath. We use that in grades K to 8, I believe. And then the other part is Study Island. And Study Island does help prepare students for the exams. Test scores are important to people. And so we've got to prepare for them, right? And so it also has benchmark exams that we use. So the teachers will give the benchmark, and then they'll use that to inform their instruction, change their instruction. Both of those are used very heavily in elementary and in middle school, and then Study Island, I believe, is used at the high school. So we use it a lot. And we are getting a discounted price, and if we do the 3-year option, it is much cheaper to do it that way.
So is the discounted price still the $240,000?
Yes, the other price is $274,000.
Are these district funds then?
Yes.
Not anything else? Okay, so ExactPath sounds like the teachers have to set something up for their students in the classroom to log on and do stuff?
Yes.
How much professional development do they get for ExactPath?
Well, they got professional development. This came before me, so they were using it before me, and they got professional development. We also get free professional development. So one of my plans is to find out who feels like they need it, especially our new teachers, and they will come and do it for free.
Okay.
So we are going to provide that for them.
So So Study Island, you said something about exams. Is this PSSA?
And Keystones, yes.
And that's the only thing Study Island is used for?
It does, no, it does the same thing that Exact Path does, where kids can get on and learn more about biology, learn more about literature, learn more about reading, learn more about writing. And teachers can, they can customize it if they want for themselves for their own class. So if they are studying fractions, they can pull up the fraction piece and have students work through that.
Do you guys have data that shows how many children actually use Study Island?
We can pull that up, yes.
I'd be interested to know.
Okay.
And also how many teachers are using Exact Path, or is it required?
I believe the principals did require it. And
Every grade?
In the
school,
elementary,
through middle?
because they rely on it. It's the only source of data we have for math. In reading, we have Acadience, and that provides us our data, but it's the only data that every kid gets the same gets the same assessment, and that's what we use as our sole form of data for math. If we don't have that, we'd have to find something else that would allow us to assess math.
Is there any way that a child who uses Exact Path regularly would manipulate the system and get out of,
I'm looking at a
real
teacher here. No,
numbers?
she's saying no.
No. So the assessments are real, like they can't maybe progress until,
Oh, no, and if they don't perform well, it backs them down. Like, as a learning support teacher, I love it, because I can individualize for every single student in my class. And put them back on the level where they need to be. But they can't manipulate it unless they're really good guessers and just guess right, but there's just, and one of the nice things about it, it's not just multiple choice. There are different things where they have to interact with it. It's, it's just not always choosing A, B, C, and D. Like, they actually have to manipulate the screen to answer. So,
Okay.
you can't just manipulate it.
okay, thank you. Okay, so now I have another question. Is this the monetary value of this program? Is it dependent upon how many grades or kids are enrolled in it?
Well, this is district-wide. It's cheaper to go district-wide than it is to go by the number of kids who enroll in it.
So we could be using it at the high school as well?
I think Exact Path only goes up to 8th grade, I think.
We've actually tried it with some of our students. The problem is the content itself is not age appropriate for high school.
Okay.
They found it, even students who are struggling readers or struggling with math, they found it to be too elementary for them, so that the engagement wasn't there, so we weren't getting a true read. It wasn't a great assessment for us.
And they do use Study Island at the high school.
So this is somewhat like a curriculum, right?
No.
Well, I mean, the way the questions, the topics, like she said, what the kids' interest level is.
It's sort of like a tutorial. I think I'd call it more of a tutorial than I would a curriculum, where kids get on, and if they're not doing well, it backs them up and has them do it again to try to supplement the teaching, to supplement their learning.
Like a lot of fact-based type of
It's
questions.
Truly different depending on whatever
Right.
the skill is. Yeah. It really supplements is what it truly does.
Right.
Because it's diagnostic prescriptive, so whatever comes out, this is the prescription for a student, this is what they should do, that's what their path is. And that allows them then to move forward or move back depending on what their need is. But yeah, it really is different for every student.
It measures their gaps. So they'll get assessed in the beginning, and if they have gaps in fractions or they have gaps in decimals, then it will present that material to them to try to fill that gap in.
So how often are they getting assessed?
Well, they are on it as, I think, pretty much every day, or?
It depends on the student.
It depends on the student. They're assessed 3 times a year.
Through the program?
Through the program, yes. And on an average, most students, like, when we're doing differentiated groups, that's one of the things, like the stations, that's one of the things that the kids work on. And because it's individualized, it's tailored to their needs. So probably at least 20 minutes, if, every day in ELA and math during small group time, the kids are on it and using it.
It's not intended to have the whole class be on it at the same time. You guys might be on it while I'm meeting with them, and then when we switch, you'll do that, and I'll meet with you guys. And so it's not like the teacher's sitting at their desk and all the kids are on the computer.
So are the teachers getting, say, reports
Yes.
for each kid on where they're struggling, where
Yes.
their strengths and where they're improving? But you
Yes.
said those come with the assessments, or is it a daily report?
There's a daily report. I go through my dashboard. It'll tell me what kids have done what in their learning pathway, and it'll tell me how they've performed on it. Yeah, I can see that instantaneously, who's been on it and how they're doing. And I can also go in and create lessons for them individually as well that aren't in their own pathway. So I can go in and create an assignment, and then when they've completed it, I get a report that lets me know how they've done.
Anything else?
I just want to say about this, I do have a concern about our control over how that information is being taught. I have had a couple of concerns from parents, just so the board knows about the way the information is taught, even though it's math. I don't know a whole lot about it, but and of course, all you hear is just the concern part, not the stuff that goes well. So.
Well, I wish they would pass those concerns along to us so that we could address them.
Yeah, I mean, it's, sometimes parents just mention things in discussions and it's not to the point of where it needs to be escalated. Do you know what I mean? So, and it's just like, take it with a grain of salt, use it in my decision-making process. And if I feel a need to like address it or send an email or escalate it or something, I'll do that, but I just, how do we as a district control how that information does get presented to the kids or taught to the kids? Like we aren't able to, and I know the teachers aren't going to be able to see every single like math problem that comes up, so that company is creating this, curriculum in a sense, supplemental curriculum, but we don't have control over what information is being.
Honestly, I don't know how to answer that without understanding what their concern is.
That's my concern, is that it's just a very broad thing, that this bigger company is doing and how they're determining how the lesson is being taught or how those facts are being, taught to the kids. We, as a district, we don't have control over that because it's such a large company that, is probably all over the country,
So my understanding, so my son is in 8th grade this year and does a lot of, it's constantly Study Island. I get home, oh yeah, we're doing Study Island.
Yeah.
My understanding is that what they've been taught to this point, this kind of takes temperature as to how much they're comprehending, how much they're learning, and then based on the way that they score in the test, they are either continued along that path of learning kind of at the rate or pace that they are, or as they said before, if there's, maybe they have a weakness in fractions. So the teacher is able to then go back and pay more attention to that student and work with them more on that skill. That's my interpretation. Just I don't.
Yeah,
never...
right. But how does the software know that they have a weakness in fractions? Well, they know that because the student was given these fractions, but how was that information presented? Is the thing, so. And even though it's math.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of struggling to understand what the objection is. I don't know what that is.
I wish I could give you like an example, like the example. I just am leery of these, and my kids, like, this has been around a long time.
Yes.
Because my son's 24 now, and he was doing Study Island.
Yes.
When he was coming up.
They are designed, at least Study
Dover.
Island is designed to match the PSSA and Keystone assessments and the format of those assessments and the way those assessments are worded. So it is designed to present content the way that those exams present it.
I just love that you guys are choosing curriculum. You get to choose the books. You get to choose, we get to choose the economics book. We get to choose the software, the coding book. Like, we get to choose that information and look at it and make sure it's good. But then when it comes to this, this is a national company, and we don't get to pick and choose, you know, what our students are seeing on the screen. That, you know,
How much-
and I know it's just math, but like just what they're seeing on the screen after screen after screen after screen. There's no way for us, you know, as a local community to make sure that that's abiding by what, you know, but by what we want our students to be seeing. You know, especially if they're getting it 20 minutes a day, that's a lot. That's a lot that we don't have control over what the student is seeing. So,
Do you know what level of control you have over the way the content is presented?
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I'm not even-
What's being presented that we don't have control over. A lot of times with ExactPath, I will actually do a lesson on the board with the student.
Katrina, could you come up to the microphone? That might help for those that are watching online too. Sorry.
I was going to say that a lot of times I will actually put the lesson up on my board and I actually go through it. I'll use it as a teaching tool. So I guess I'm not exactly sure what the concern is about how it's being presented. Like, are you saying the steps that they're using to teach how to solve it? Or are you talking about other, I guess I don't understand when you're talking about math and we're talking about fractions. So they're taking them through a lesson and teaching them how to do something. Is it the steps that they're taking to solve it that is the concern?
I'm trying to remember the one so that I could be really specific for you guys, but it was something like the child picked an answer that wasn't socially acceptable, so they got it marked wrong. And it wasn't, I know you're looking at me like, what is she talking about? I'm just saying, like, I've just heard a couple of things, and honestly, that doesn't really matter. The thing that really matters to me is that we don't have local control over determining what our kids see for 20 minutes a day, screen after screen. That's just my concern. I love that Dr. Hauk is creating our curriculum and piloting our curriculum, and she knows what each book is. We have the library list. Like, you know, we have control over that. Like, I'm a very locally, you know, I think it's super important that we keep that control local. So my only concern with stuff like this, with curriculum-based stuff like this, is that it's just big, you know, and we don't have local control over, you know, over how it's presented to the kids. That's my concern.
I know over the past 3 years, I have seen a lot of assignments that I have actually played over, and I can't say that I have ever seen anything that I would have thought was a social norm of how to choose. Like, I've never seen anything like that. So I would love to know. I'm in that program a lot. I've never seen anything like that. So I don't know. I can't answer.
Well, I
that.
guess it was the child was doing Study Island at home, and it was math. And I think, you know, when you're a teacher and you're in it every day, you know, it's just, you're accustomed to it. But then when a parent's looking over a child's shoulder and it's like, wait, you got that wrong? And that's, you know, like, and they're like, you know, kind of taken aback because that's not wrong, really. So I don't want to get like too,
That's okay.
You know, I
It's
just want to go.
I guess it's just weird because if they're doing, I guess that where I'm confused, if they're doing fractions, you would definitely have a mathematical answer.
You would think, exactly.
So
That's
I guess
exactly
I'm trying to figure out how there would be a social
Me too.
norm to
Right.
a question
Right.
about math when it should be a correct
Yeah,
answer.
a black and
solved
white.
the correct
Yeah, a
way.
black and white answer. Yeah, right. Yeah.
When I was always under the assumption that it did pair with the curriculum, that it was in tandem, that it wasn't completely separate.
It's
Yeah,
aligned to the
maybe
standards.
I just want to make sure that our district doesn't go, like, keep going in a direction of like bigger, like, you know, I just would like to try to make sure that we keep as much local control over our decisions and what our students are seeing on a daily basis. I just, you know, I don't mind stuff here and there. I get it. And if it's a tool that's, you know, improving our students, of course, all day long. I just want to make sure that we try to keep everything as locally, you know, that's all.
I agree with Heidi because I think the same thing applies to our cyber charter.
Yeah.
Not cyber,
Right.
Dover Cyber
Right.
Academy.
We don't have a lot of.
You know, we don't even know what that curriculum looks like, and that can be concerning when a parent is asking, why is this type of lesson being taught, or why is my child being asked this type of question?
I understand your concern. We don't have the manpower to do that.
Right.
Is
Yeah,
the
I
bottom
get it.
line.
I get it. I totally get it.
You would need to hire
Yeah.
a whole school of teachers. You'd have to hire a physics teacher to vet the physics curriculum, and we don't have those resources.
Well, here's a question in regards to Edmentum then. As I'm sitting here listening to this, I'm thinking, this sounds like really nice piece of the school day where it makes things easy, for our teachers. And not that I want to see things get more difficult, but I'm just wondering, is there an alternative that's possibly not as expensive, still could get us some assessments and help track kids' progress? And
What I will say is if the board votes against it, then I guess I would have to look for something else.
Do you know how many years we've been using it? Because like I said, Study Island, I mean. it's
Longer
been
than
around
I've been
at
here.
least-
When I was still teaching fifth grade when we were using it, so.
We've been using it since I've been here, so 20-plus years.
Yeah, I mean, I would never want to take a tool away from our teachers and our district that is a good tool. Like, I would never want to do that.
And
So
I-
I certainly won't vote against this, but I just want to express my concern that we kind of try to tamper these national options and try to keep our decisions local.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that because we are, this would be a huge blow
Yeah,
to
I
our
understand.
district if
Yeah.
this didn't pass. It would put us in a very difficult position. Certainly, that's your decision to make
Rena,
as a
can
board.
you explain what you mean by that? In like the capacity
Again,
that you see it? Like
that's
how-
the only resource that we have to collect data on math. That's, and I don't want to use this word standardized because it's not the correct use of the word. But without this, we would have to rely on each individual teacher to tell us how their kid is doing in math, and that's not consistent. Like, this is where we pull our data from math. This is how we determine where our small groups are going to be. This is how we determine how kids are progressing or not progressing. Like, this is what we use. So it's a huge part of our district. Could we do without it? Yeah, but not this year. Like, that would take years for us to figure out or develop how to do the things that we're currently doing with it and how we would do without it. We've been doing it for 6 years. Like, this is our data. When I ask my principals, pull your math data, this is what they're going to. And along with, we have spring math as well. That's basically just math facts. But without this, I think you'll have a lot of teachers in here. Because this is what we rely on.
So you're saying this is a necessary component throughout the school year, not just the end of the year PSSA
Oh,
results?
absolutely. Absolutely. Again, it identifies, if I have 24 kids in my class, I do my best to figure out what each of their individual needs is. This computer program does that. It assesses them. It fills in the gaps. It gives them extra practice. I can't make individualized extra practice for 24 different kids. This program does. I can do it for small groups, but imagine if I had to figure out at all of the math gaps that each one of my 24 kids has, and then I have to develop a program to help fill the gaps of 24 different kids. This program does that. And without it, we're going to have to figure out another way to be able to do that. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, again, if the board says, no, you can't have it, then I guess we'll have to figure it out. But I just want you to be aware of what that means.
So Kathy, did you guys use ExactPath, the Edmentum program?
Yes, and then we met as grade level meetings and went over all the results. And that way we could compare my class as to what the problem was. It was the same thing in maybe another teacher's class in that grade level because we were using the same assessments.
Exactly.
And it does, it just backs you down, it backs the child down. And I would walk around behind them consistently and read the questions as they were taking. So I saw what was on there. I've never seen anything that has been like, oh my golly, this is a real problem. We're teaching the children. No, it was never like that.
This is a different day and age is the problem. That's the thing. Like curriculum and indoctrination. I know some of you guys don't like to hear that term, but we do need to be conscious that, you know, we don't want that happening in our district, or at least I don't want that happening in our district. That's one of the biggest reasons why I ran to be on the board. So when you were teaching, that wasn't even a thing, you know, so we just need to be careful that that's not in getting into our district
I can
slowly,
certainly,
you know.
I can certainly make my teachers aware of your concern and ask them to
Yeah, if they
be
see
looking for that
anything.
kind of thing
Yeah.
and
if there's
reporting back to
parents
me.
watching and they see their student on study island and they see issues like that, I don't know how we could address it with the company if it, and I'm just saying, you know, I'm just like, I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill by any means, but I just do want to
I think teachers
make
today
everybody
are
aware of
still
that.
hyper vigilant about what's going in into what they're doing with their children on computers. You have to be. You have to be very, very vigilant because you don't want that to come back to bite you. So you can't tell me that they're not watching carefully everything that's coming in. Yeah,
They absolutely
I'm
are.
not saying that things can't be missed. But for the most part, when you're doing these study island,
well, the kids do it at home too. So
well, and I didn't know that. We never
Yeah.
did that at home. So I know nothing about that.
Yeah,
But
my
when the
son did
testing,
it at
which
home,
kind of
but that was a
surprises
long
me
time
because I don't understand how you can get solid information from something when it's being tested at home. And again, I don't know how it's used at home. I don't know that. And maybe that's for a child that is homeschooled or something.
I don't believe that they're being asked to do it at home, but they can access it if they choose to.
Is that for the scoring as far as how they're?
When they do a benchmark, no.
That's done in
Benchmark.
school.
Thank you,
Right.
benchmark.
Practice, especially if they're doing like the exact path trophies or the blue ribbons in Study Island. We have kids that just want to excel, so they like to do it at home, but they're never asked. I know I don't. I can't speak for every teacher. It's not required for
No.
every student to do it at home.
And quite frankly, I'd prefer that they go on Exact Path than a video game at home.
yeah, well, yeah, my son, he wanted the blue ribbons, so he
Right.
would do, like, he'd come home, and so, yeah, but that was a while ago. But we are in a different day and age now, you know, and I just want to make sure that that everybody's on alert, you know, just kind of looking for those
I feel very
things.
confident
But I don't want to
that-
take an important tool from our district, definitely
Yeah.
not. But
I
I don't
feel
want to throw the
conf-
baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
I
But
get
if we
it.
could just be a little bit.
I feel confident that our
cognizant of-
teachers are very cognizant of what is being presented.
Dr. Houck, we've talked this thing to death. Is there a way that you can reach out to Edmentum to get samples of, you know, the types of questions that are asked, things like that, that can be shared with the board so that they understand, here are the types of questions that are being used, here's what's being asked of the student, so they're aware and they have the idea about this.
Okay.
That would hopefully address some of those concerns that are out there at this point.
Yep, I certainly can do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to addiction treatment technologies.
Care Solace is something that we have been using all along. What we do have, that I believe data was shared with the board about the number of people that have accessed it. It is available outside of school hours. Parents they don't need us to refer them. They can contact them on their own. And it's basically just a way for a family to get help to connect with community services, understanding that community services are scarce right now. Just like there's a teacher shortage, there's a shortage of counselors, of therapists, of everything. And so it is very difficult to get services. You're on waiting lists. And so Care Solace provides an avenue to get those services and get families connected. Again, being paid for out of 7% set aside, which must be used for social emotional learning and mental health. I'm sorry, before I move on, questions? Okay, the SAP, we purchased the SAP Liaison because we also received a grant. It was not one that we applied for, it was one that was given to us of about, I can never remember if it's 120 or 150, Mr. Perkins? $150,000 to spend only on mental health. So we have had a SAP counselor. They used to be free. I had it for all 8 years that I was high school principal. I had a SAP counselor. They would provide us with two, one for drug and alcohol and one for mental health. The mental health SAP counselor is no longer free. We still get the drug and alcohol. So because I got this grant and I have $150,000 to spend, I decided to purchase the SAP counselor. So they are another layer of of services that can be provided to students who can't access those out in the community. What they do is they do an assessment on the student, and then they call the parent. They get permission to meet with the kid. So SAP counselors do not meet with students with outside of written parent permission. They assess the student, and then they provide recommendations to the parent about what direction to go. And I think that's it for me, right?
One more. Can you talk about PBIS at the middle school?
Well, you had a huge presentation on that last month. That is the app that the presentation that the teachers are using to monitor the awards and the points that the students get. I'm not sure what I can provide for you in addition to that lengthy presentation that you had last month, other than to say that we are again paying for that through the 7% set aside that has to be used on social emotional learning.
So I have some comments to make in regards to PBIS. You know I love it. So in regards to how long we've been using it, do you recall how many years?
I believe this is our second year using it.
PBIS?
Oh, no, PBIS, that's been around for a long time. 20-some years.
So this district has been utilizing PBIS that long?
I'm going to have to look at the people that were here before me.
Yeah. So I obviously I can't support this program because I hear consistently from the teachers in this district that I speak to that their kids believe this program is a joke.
When you say the teachers, I'd be interested in knowing what level and how many.
All age levels.
How many teachers are we talking about that consult with you on a regular basis?
Let me continue with where I'm going with this. So if I could get some data to show that it's working, as far as there's less referrals for behavior and, you know, every teacher supports this program because they think they see the results of it, I would have no problem. But unless there's data that shows there's a decline in referrals for behavior, that the children are more respectful and adhering to policies, respecting each other, there's less issues with, you know, as far as the school environment, classroom environment with behavior, you know, then that would show me that this program works.
I understand. I just want to remind you that you did have teachers here last month that shared with you how they're using it and are supportive of it. So I understand where you're coming from. I do understand what you're saying.
But what it sounds to me like is it's just a big store, a big fun thing. They get to look on their app and find out what they want to purchase, but there's no consistency in every classroom on how the teachers are allocating the points. So if you show up to Mr. Benton's class, he might give you 50 points. If you show up to Weasling's class, he might give you 10 points. Like, there's no consistency. So where are the parameters and how to use the point system? How do the kids know for sure that they can earn a certain amount of points? Or are they just going to get random points? I raised my hand today, I got some points, you know, and then they're getting rewarded for just ridiculous reasons when there's hardworking kids wondering, well, why am I working so hard if they're getting rewards and they're not really working hard? It sends a very confusing message, I think, to a lot of these students. And the ones who do come to school without any intent of being educated are still getting rewards. If they're dishonoring their teacher, they're still getting rewards. If they, you know, do one nice thing in the classroom, they get a reward. That's, to me, I feel like because of the inconsistencies and the lack of expectation on how to allocate the points to these kids, there's a lot of people in the district who don't see the point in it. So we're spending money on PBIS rewards and apps and school stores, which I'm all about kids running a school store. But if the process as a whole looks like a good benefit to learning and keeping the kids engaged with, you know, say the idea of spending in business and whatnot, that makes sense. It's a learning process. But if it's all related to behavior and our behavior issues haven't taken a decline over all these years of using it, we need to look at a new program. So that's where I just need some data, is what I'm saying.
Mrs. Whitmer, could you answer Dr. Houck's question, though? She asked you how many teachers you've spoken to about this that have expressed their displeasure with the program. So we know you just stated that there's a lot of people in the district.
Yeah.
What is the definition of a lot here that are saying this to you?
Well, one teacher I speak to could say that multiple colleagues agree with them. So I may not have had a direct conversation with every single one of those teachers. However, I hear from other people that I run into, that, yeah, I spoke to this teacher. They can't take it anymore. The kids are out of control. They don't get disciplined. They don't know what their consequences are. There's no real expectations on discipline. They don't get help from the administration. That's the consistent message I'm hearing. I'm not bringing this to the board and talking about this because I have a soapbox just against PBIS. We have a real issue in our district where teachers aren't being heard about the lack of support in that behavioral area. So if this is a part of the problem, which I think it is, because we're rewarding children to pieces and they just take advantage of it, I am all for rewards academically. If you want to reward children on behavior, that's a parent's job, in my opinion. I think it's good to make verbal recognition to children for their good choices, their good behavior, their honor, their respect towards their students in the classroom, their friends. But when you attach rewards to behavior that are arbitrary, that are meaningless to the kids, the whole environment of behavior expectation just gets degraded. And the kids come with already knowing what they can get away with and that they can push the limits. I hear about this referral matrix, and I probably will not be able to do justice to how it was explained to me. This is also information I'd love to have if you have it on file, but they were talking about how there's a child in your class who acts up consistently. One day they might act up this way and you refer them to maybe the administration for this behavior. So that student has to have 3, I think is it 3? You guys can correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know what you're talking
So if we're talking about bad behavior, we're talking about a reason to refer the child.
I don't know what the matrix is.
So, and that just might be my word for it, but if they are acting out one time and they get written up for that, and they come the next day, they act out again, and it looks different, and not the exact same behavior as the first time, so it's a completely different referral write-up. And then there's another behavior the next day, which altogether 3 write-ups in a row should cause serious concern for this child in the classroom, but because they weren't the exact same behavior, it doesn't calculate as a needed consequence to the child. So am I making sense?
Not at all. That is not the experience that I understand is what's going on in our schools.
So the write-up process, maybe, I think we could just get some information on what is it. Like, I want to be told what exactly is in place so that I don't have all these thoughts and ideas.
We can do that.
Yeah.
But let's move on. We can't do that right now. We can give a presentation another time.
Sure. And I'm not asking for a presentation, but I do think that I would like to have this PBIS rewards completely separated from the content for next week. I can't support it. I've heard too many negative things about it. And in regards to presentations, I think student council, student activities, the things that at North Salem, amazing, great. I love that the kids are involved. But I really haven't heard any significant value to the program through presentations. And that's just my opinion.
Well, I will disagree with Mrs. Whitmer on one thing. I do think we need a presentation on PBIS. As Dr. Cartwright said, you brought up a lot of stuff there, Carmen. You asked for a lot of information. So I think it's important for the board and the public to hear the responses to everything that you just asked about. So I think we will take the time to have that presentation put together.
I would also encourage those teachers that have your ear to please come and see me. We can't fix things we're not aware of. I don't know who they are or who you're talking to, but I would love to have a sit-down conversation with them.
Well, maybe some of that might come out in the survey that we're sending out too, if the teachers share what their thoughts are about the behavior.
I don't know that that'll help me to target who those people, not target, that was the wrong use of word, I apologize. Help me to sit down, meet Dr. Cartwright and I with those individual teachers. Until I know what their concerns are specifically and where the people they should be coming to with those.
When you guys do a presentation on the disciplinary process, can you include in that how that spills into sports and whether or not a student is allowed to play for a game or a season Like,
Yes.
like how that's determined as well? Because I think there's some confusion with those students' peers and with parents on how that's,
Yes,
how that
we could include
disciplinary
that.
rolls into that.
Sure,
Thank
that
you.
can
would
be part of
awesome.
it. All right.
And isn't some of that related to PIAA anyhow? That's not our own policies. We have to follow PIAA.
Correct.
Correct.
So,
Okay, that would be
Need a
great.
motion
That'd
to
be good
take
info.
PIBs off consent agenda or no?
we do not need a motion to remove it, so. Okay, PSBA.
We are requesting to renew our membership for PSBA for the year. This is where we get all of our updates on law and policy, and it's all researched with all of the staff at PSBA and attorneys, and it's all taken care of for us. And if we had to do that ourselves, we would be paying a great deal more than $17,000 a year. Mrs. Jacoby, would you like to talk about the insurance package renewal?
If we could back up, I would like that one removed from the consent agenda for next week as well, please. For the insurance package renewal, we just wanted to provide you some information and remind everyone that back in 22-23, Mr. Ulmer had worked with our insurance broker and we had switched to AIG. And last year, or I guess should say going into 22-23, that saved the district $78,000 or 17% by switching carriers at that point. So the renewal for this year is only a 2% increase, and that's due to an increase in replacement property values, like inflation of building materials, market trends, but it's also offset. The increase of that is offset by a decrease in actually our workers' comp of 2%. So that's how we figured out with that number. But we had done an RFP last year with our insurance broker. We made the switch, which was what resulted in the 17% increase going into 22-23. Yes.
How can we get workers' comp rates down?
Well, we actually did see a decrease in the first time in 3 or 4 years.
Oh, good.
So yes, we had when I first.
What we do different? That we can keep doing
so-
or expand on?
Well, so if you're familiar with workers' comp rates, it's over a few years, so like the mod rates. When I first started here was right when we brought the autistic classrooms back into the district. Kathy Geyer and her team have really worked really hard on increasing our training over the last few years.
Okay.
So I feel that is a positive aspect. It's funny, I'll say this when we have our meetings, I hate talking about workers' comp and how well we're doing because I always feel like it jinxes me. So we've also, so that has been a huge savings for us. So it has allowed our mod rate to continue to decrease. We had a huge spike in, let's say, 17, 18, and then each year we've worked really hard to reduce it. That's why we're starting to see the rates.
Okay, good.
And then we continue to work with our new workers' comp carrier that we had when we switched to AIG. I feel they have a really solid training program. So working with Mr. Fluke, now that he's here, with the custodians and maintenance team to maybe do some ongoing regular training for his department, and then just continuing to reevaluate. We meet every quarter with our workers' comp to kind of evaluate what injuries we've had, what can we do. They will bring people out and do training for us. So those are all things that we work on.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. Any other question on insurance? Okay.
Okay, Mr. Fluke, I think you have the next couple of items.
Yes, so the first one is a quote to purchase a new combi oven for the middle school. We have 2 pieces of equipment that are in there right now. They are both way past end of life. The one is actually 27 years old. The other piece of equipment is 33 years old. The components to fix these are becoming obsolete, and the price to fix them is way higher than they're worth. So the combi oven itself will replace those 2 pieces of equipment, which would be, it's a great feature. It actually steams and bakes at the same time. every school district is going to this. It's just a great piece of equipment. It's very versatile. You can bake in it, you can steam in it, you can actually do one function on the bottom while you're doing another function on the top. So, really great piece of equipment. And that'll actually play into, I think, 5.35, where some of the obsolete equipment, we'll take those two pieces of equipment and make them obsolete. They are not worth anything, pretty much just scrap for that. If anybody,
Yeah, I have a question.
absolutely.
Is this, did we look like on web restaurant or anything like that to purchase it through the internet? Because I know a lot of times commercial ovens and things like that are a lot cheaper if we buy it ourselves. Are you buying?
Yeah, we are buying this ourselves. Yes,
Okay.
we are buying this ourselves. So yes, that is, it's being purchased by the district. Yes.
Okay.
And I believe that it's set up through the CoStar's pricing program.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you have to get
Right.
it through there? Okay.
Yep. So they offer us discounted pricing through school districts. There's a lot of different plans that do that.
All right.
All right, on to the next one. It is for recoating the gym floors at 3 different schools. Mrs. Allman, would you mind putting that slide up? This is going to be a really boring slide because I made it. I apologize. They're going to not look near as nice as Dr. Houck's. Told you. So it's kind of hard to see, but the reason we want to go forward with this, so the cost on refinishing the 3 gym floors, if we do it in-house and buy the equipment ourselves, is about $16,000. That sounds like a lot of money, but if that was a little bit bigger, right now the cost to just refinish, so the first one that's here, it says high school, and it says $1 to $1.50 per square foot to refinish it. We'd be looking anywhere from $13,000 to $20,000 just to do the high school itself. No of the other 2. If we do this in-house, we're going to save $16,000 the first year. We are going to do the middle school and the high school over the summer break and work in North Salem Elementary over one of the breaks through the school year. We just don't have the manpower to do all of them over the summer. That's why we're going to spread them out. So the other figure there, the $3 to $4 a square foot, every so often you will need to take those surfaces of finish off the gym floor all the way down to the wood and possibly repaint all the lines on it. That's the cost for that. You can see that is a lot greater too. Now, we probably wouldn't do the repainting, but we could get the surface down to that point to have the repainting crew come in, repaint it, and then we refinish it again. So this is a cost savings that's going to just keep basically saving us money every year that goes by. We implemented this at my previous school district. It saves a ton of money. The company that sells it actually comes in and trains our staff also. And they will come in, if we get new staff, they'll come in and train them too. So it's a great way to save money, do stuff in-house. We don't have to outsource it. So this just kind of breaks down and gives you a good visual. So that first year, we basically save the money to pay for all the products and the equipment that do this.
How often are you guys resurfacing floors?
It depends on how many coats. If you put on 2 coats, you can go every other year. If you put on 1, it's every year. It all depends on the use of the floor, like how much traffic you have on it. But that's what we usually see for gym floors, for wood gym floors, because these are all wooden gym floors. Any questions? Sorry, it's boring. And then the last thing would be the carpet down at Lieben Elementary for the offices, the main office, the administrative offices there, and the conference room. That carpet was put into the building in 1998. So it's 25 years old. It's just wore out. We received 4 quotes, and we're going to go with the lowest one. And that's the one that is on the agenda. And we actually are saving a little money on that quote because we are going to get rid of the carpet itself because they actually charge you a fee. We're going to get rid of that here because we already pay for the services to get rid of the waste carpet, the old stuff that's tore out.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Before you leave, well, I had asked this a couple months ago, and I know you had just started, but I had asked about doing like a 5 to 10 year capital expenditure plan. When do you think that we'll be able to see something like that? So we have kind of an idea of what we're looking at over the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think a 10-year plan is possible? Is it more like 5 to
I think
8, or-
what I would like to do is more of an immediate plan, what we're going to see in next less than 5 years.
Yes,
And I
okay.
have been working on that. I don't know exactly when it's going to be ready, though.
Okay.
There's a lot of workings, and we're trying to gear up right now for summer. We're trying to get all the summer stuff in line because we have a really short window to do a lot of work in the Buildings and
Sure.
Grounds Department.
Okay. But you're working on it?
Yep, we
so-
are working on that,
Okay,
yes.
good.
Yep. Any other questions?
The next two items, the direct energy business for natural gas and for electric, you can see the public comment right on the agenda there, that we've participated with IU12 in a consortium for over 15 years for both items. And if you have additional questions about that, you can certainly ask Mrs. Weaver next week. This next item, the 21st Century Community Learning Center for after-school programs at Dover and North Salem. It's actually housed at Dover, and the students from Dover and North Salem are able to participate. This is a grant. This costs us nothing, and parents choose to apply for this and have their children participate in the after-school program. It's been going on for several years. Any questions about that?
Is this all school year or summer? When does it
The
start?
whole school year.
So has it been in place already, or is this something new for next year?
It's been in place. This is a renewal.
Okay. About how many kids do we have a part of those two schools?
I do not have that number.
Okay.
I think it's less than 20, though.
Combined?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a small number. I think Mrs. Jacoby has a handful of items to discuss.
Items 524 through 529 are my normal things that I do have on here. I will entertain any questions that you may have on that. I do want to let you know for appointments, you might see some additions to that for next week. I will send an email out to you if we add to that. The reason being, this time of year, we're actively interviewing for our vacant positions, particularly our teaching positions. So for example, this week we have a number of second-round interviews for PE teachers, reading specialists, elementary teachers. You'll see a couple appointments already on there that we've completed, but we would like to get those appointments on next week if possible in order to secure the best candidates and get them board approved. So normally I do not add to that section, but this time of year is a time that we will do that in order to keep hiring going, as we are actively competing with many other school districts. Any questions on those items? And then I will, if not, I will start with item 530. Okay. So for the following three, we have to do memo of understanding anytime we want to update the contract, the professional contract. These two of the positions have been in front of you before. We had Bocce here about 2 months ago, I believe, talking about their amazing season that they had. And as you may remember, we've had them here for 2 years, and it was under a grant that we had gotten, and that grant is now expiring. So if we would like to keep Bocce activity going, we need to add it in as a coaching position within our activity list within the professional contract. So under the professional contract, it was evaluated in partnership with the union based on, just to give you an idea, based on the number of hours that the coaches participate in, the number of students, the management of the students, injury and safety risk factor, and pressure factor. So those are the factors that the union looks at in order to evaluate the position. In order to add a head, and these three MOUs will be separate votes. They will not be under consent. We listed them under here just for me to provide you information, but we will have them as separate items for you to vote on for next week. But for the Bocce coaching position, the MOU that we currently have in there states that we'll be adding 2 positions, 1 head coach, 1 assistant coach, and it will, year 1, it'll cost the district approximately $1,503 for both positions. That would be the stipend that the head coach and the assistant coach would be eligible for under the contract. So that gives you that. For powerlifting coaches, that has also been in front of you previously. For that position, The MOU consists of adding a head coach and an assistant coach if this is an activity that we would like added to Category D under the professional contract, and that adding those 2 coaching positions would cost the district $2,774. The other area that we had evaluated by the union is we have 3 sporting areas, 4 really sporting areas that currently do not have junior high assistant coaches. They have junior high head coaches, but when a junior high activity goes away, there's only 1 coach with them. All 4 of these sports continue to grow in their numbers, and we felt at this point it was a good time to look at potentially adding junior high assistant coach. Many of our other sports, such as basketball, baseball, softball, majority of all of our other sports except these 4 have currently 2 coaching positions for their junior high teams. And we just feel for the safety of the kids, the number of kids when they're going away for events, it's a priority to have junior high assistant coaches added to these sporting events. So we have cheerleading, soccer for boys, soccer for girls, and cross country. So if we would do that, to add a junior high assistant coach would be $979 a year. For each of the soccer coaches, boys and girls, it would be $1,347 each. And for junior high cross country, for an assistant coach for junior high, it'd be $1,143. So that would allow all of our sporting teams who have junior high groups to have 2 coaches within their program. Are there any questions on those 3 MOUs? 2 of them you've been familiar, you knew we were coming forward with them. Yes?
Christina, I just wanted to know, how were those coaches being supported previously? Just volunteers?
Volunteers, potentially, maybe the head coach would come down and support during some of the sporting events, if available. Often by themselves, yes. Mm-hmm. Unless they have parent volunteers that are willing to come in and help support.
I'm just curious, is the hope that adding these positions will get people to fill that spot and be available to help the head coach, or are we still going to struggle regardless to get enough help for the coach if we couldn't even get volunteers?
Well, remember, parent volunteers are free, so they're not being compensated for their time. They're not consistent either. So they might come and help at one practice or maybe at one event, but when you hire them on as a coach, there's a requirement as part of that coaching on being at every practice, being at all the games. I think we do struggle with parent coaches. We have been lucky. I can only compare it to the other junior high assistant coaches, which we have been able to fill. So I would assume by adding these as paid positions, we would be able to fill them as we have with other sports. But obviously, you're right, it's never a guarantee. We could add these as paid positions and potentially not be able to fill them, but we've had good success in our other sports. And it just adds consistency for the students. So when you have volunteers just rotating through, it's inconsistent on the coaching and things like that. So adding paid positions just creates consistency too for the students. And we know the junior high sports are very important as feeder pools into our varsity sports. So that's why we're excited, is that these programs continue to grow. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
The second reading of the 3 policies is next. I've provided the summary of changes on those, so I'll entertain questions if you have them. Obsolete listing, are there any questions for Mr. Fluke or Mr. Boyd? And the rest are just donations that we acknowledge. If there are no questions, we can move to the first reading of Policy 137.3.
Can I just go back to 540? I just think it's important to note on that one. That is
Sure.
one of many contributions or donations that have been made to the Town Library from Mr. Krebs in memory of his wife, who was a long-term teacher here. I think she had 50 years here, wasn't it? I mean, it was, yeah. So we just want to thank him for that and continuing that.
Absolutely. Are there any questions on the brand new policy 137.3? That is first reading tonight. It just wasn't ready last month with the other three. Okay. I think that does it.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion from the board members tonight?
My first one was already addressed with Dr. Houck, and I've been requested to get a book program reading assignment for the students from grades K through 12 by various grandmothers in the community. I guess what they want to do is, when they're babysitting this summer, they want these kids reading. Another one. The district received an attaboy from a parent, and it was very specific. It dealt with the idea of what we had adopted months ago with regards to one parent who drives or one adult or whoever, kids to sporting programs. Parent Eric Shade brought that to my attention. He says, really glad that we had done that. He's not only for himself, but for others. Got a question from another person. Are there any buses taking students to Northern at this time from this school district? It's a
No.
rumor that's out there.
No.
Okay.
The
that's all we need.
students from Washington Township who stayed here have to provide their own transportation. And students who go to Northern are transported by Northern.
Going on. For security, there is an issue that's been brought to my attention, and it's simply this. Employees letting other employees in the back doors of buildings, not knowing who they are. You know, students are seeing this, other adults are seeing that. Are they authorized? I'll just say this, I worked for the Justice Department. It was one of those things, if you're supposed to come through the front door, you came through the front door. Because you never know for what reason is this person being requesting to come through the back door. So that you gentlemen know that that's going on. Also, one more and this will be my last one. It was brought to my attention that on social media, there were comments made about people who are running for office, i.e., the posters that are out here in the community, there are ABC candidates, and the comment that was supposedly made and was brought to me was the idea that these people want to remove all law enforcement from these schools. So I personally questioned one or two of these individuals, and they have no intention of doing that. I just want that stated so that people know whoever started it, whyever it was done, that is false, going by what these candidates put out. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. This will bring us to our public comment period. This is, again, a 30-minute period for items on or off of the agenda, 2 minutes per speaker. So if you have anything like you'd comment on, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Okay. That brings us to our miscellaneous period for any other comments or observations from our board members. Mrs. Whitmer, you want to start?
I do. I want to talk about the budget. And I want to start with some questions I have, budget allocations for this coming school year. And I had some questions in regards to busing and also miscellaneous items, and maybe you won't be able to answer them. But my busing question is, have we reviewed, or do they consistently review any opportunities to consolidate busing?
Consolidate students on routes?
Routes.
They constantly look at routes,
Constantly
yes.
do that. And my other question has to do with a line item called miscellaneous items less than 0.07%. I don't understand that line item.
There are items that make up that category that are small dollar amounts, and Mrs. Weaver can talk to you about that next week.
Okay. All right, so my other comment in relation to the budget is when I compare the two projections from last year's discussions to this year's discussions, I see projected last year was 69 million. Projected this year is, if I'm correct, 73 million, or about 71.5 million. So I guess the first place I want to start is my mind is turning. Okay, so we got a 2% increase. Do we know what that dollar amount is by chance? Any way that we've been presented with a dollar amount on that 2% increase from the governor's budget?
I don't have that number, but Mrs. Weaver would.
So you don't know if we've been presented with a number, but I know she said we got 2%, but.
She would know what that 2%
She would know.
equates to.
Yeah.
In dollars. I don't have that number in my head.
And I don't know that we were given the number yet. So where I'm going with that is there a way, so I know that there were some new increases, such as our transportation contract. So that's where I want to see, can we apply the 2% increase to some of those other increases? But all in all, I really believe that it just makes sense that we bring the number down to the same budget that we had last year, if we can, because if we're looking at a deficit and we were able to work within the budget, last year's projected budget, and we got an increase, so that means we had a certain amount from the state and all of our other revenues. We had some extra sources of revenue come in this year that were unexpected. So what I was understanding is we worked within our projected budget. I'm saying to the board, I believe that we should just work within that same budget, that we shouldn't be looking at an increase in projected budget funds, but I guess I probably just need more information on that. But I don't agree with the idea of using fund balance. I don't think that that's going to fix our problem. So as far as the board discussing budget, I mean, I don't hear from a lot of you guys, and I'm just curious. I want to just have dialogue on this. You know, what are our other options? So, you know, I mean, Kathy, Charlie, you know, Amy and Dennis, do you guys, I already know where Heidi and Dave stand. They don't want to use the fund budget, but are you guys okay with using the fund budget, fund balance?
I'm definitely fine with using fund balance. I think we need to fix the issue of why we have to use it, but in an emergency where we did lose Washington Township, so it did put us in a little bit of a deficit. I don't have a problem using it to bridge a gap so that taxes don't need to be increased, but I think budget should be worked on constantly to bring it down to where it's not necessary. So it's more or less of a Band-Aid to get it fixed. I would say that's my opinion on it, but I would like to see where we're using what's coming in to what we're spending.
So in regards to your comment, fix the problem, what does that look like? How do we, I mean, last year we fixed it with a tax increase, but what does it look like? I know we made some cuts. We have been, you know, narrowing down this budget for the last 2 years. So we don't have to raise taxes again, so we don't have to use fund balance again. What do we do to fix it? Like, are you thinking more like cuts somewhere? I don't know.
I think in order to fix it, you'd have to have more cuts. I mean, I'm going back to the information that Dr. Cartwright shared with us. And in the past 2 fiscal years, we've reduced the budget by $3.9 million by eliminating 26 positions and reducing department and building budgets. We've denied staffing requests. We have a large percentage of the budget is related to personnel. Department budgets pick up a little piece. So in order to do this, it's going to be cuts. You're going to have to look at your programs within the district to make up that deficit. There's going to have to be some hard decisions to be made. So if the board itself as a whole says, we don't want to use money from the fund in order to not have a tax increase, then this board has to be willing to sit there and say, we're willing to cut $1.5 million worth of programs out of this district. And then the administration's going to have to come to us and say, this is what we'd recommend, and then we'd have to adopt that or not. To me, that's where this all falls. Even using this fund money still puts us at 16% related to our expenditures and revenue from a fund balance standpoint, which is more than healthy. There's plenty of money there. And to Dennis's point, the past couple of years have been unique with the loss of Washington Township and the revenue that came with that. That was $4 million plus a year in tax revenue that we lost right there. So, we had to address that with many of these cuts and such. At this point, it's going to have to be additional cuts, if the board does not want to raise revenue in any way. So we have to say, if the majority of this board says we don't want to use the $1.5 million, then Kelly and Miranda are going to have to come up to us and say, here's what you're going to have to cut to make that up and to make that difference. We can't sit there and say, I don't know what it costs to run specific programs within the district, so we have to rely on them to say that to us and tell us that. So I personally am comfortable with where the budget proposal is at this point. It does not raise taxes. It uses a minimal amount of money out of the fund balance. We've made significant cuts over the past 2 years. If we start cutting any more this year, we're getting into the bone at this point, and I'm not ready to go there myself.
Well, here's where I'm just wondering, and I'm just throwing this out there like I already did. If we find out that we can still work within the same budget that we had projected for last year, and because we have the governor's 2% increase, we had some extra revenue come in. We still have ESSER's money. I mean, can't we decrease the projected budget? I mean, by some numbers and...
I'm going to bet that your 2% in basic education funding is not nearly what you think it is as far as dollars compared to the increase in costs that we have too. You've got contractual obligations that we have to make.
Well, I just wanted to also remind everyone that our biggest expense is staffing and benefits. And so you're correct, we have contractual obligations that we've settled with support staff last year, and we're in negotiations right now with professional staff, but we also have a 10% increase in our benefits. And so that far exceeds probably what we, is a big portion of that increase. And so we very well could have a really good year with benefits. I mean, anyone who has any experience with their benefit program knows that you can have a good year with less claims, or our pattern has been the last 3 years is increased claims. Our Conrad Siegel actually wanted us to raise it 15%. That's what they're anticipating our claims to go up to for next year. So we try to be positive and assume a 10% increase, but that is a huge increase. That takes a lot of your budget. And as we know, staffing and benefits are one of the largest chunks, which is why we had to through attrition, not fill so many positions to try to get to that over $3 million in previous years.
So when we talk about places where we see the most money spent, I get that. We need our staff, we need our teachers, we need people. We can't get away from that. But I bet that there's still areas that we're able to look at and find some things that we can cut and consider unnecessary needs right now. And as I say that, I'm looking at this preliminary budget printout for the high school, and there's a line item in here that says unanticipated student and building supplies for $33,000. And that, to me, I didn't get to ask about it, but it doesn't make sense for such a large number to be in there for unanticipated student and building supplies. Unanticipated means we just want that number in there in case. Maybe I'm wrong. But then, for instance, I love PBIS. So PBIS in every building racks up to thousands of dollars for rewards. And then we have stuff like marching band and graduation, maybe there's some areas there that we can cut, like marching band, maybe they could do some more fundraising. I know we are probably tired of that word fundraising because many families do lots of it. I'm just saying maybe we could think out of the box for some areas and go to some, department heads and ask. Typically when we're looking for things to cut, I think we look at the big items, but there might be the small things that tend to add up. So what I'm saying here is projected budgets don't always need to increase. Maybe we can figure out how to finagle that back down to the budget that we were trying to work within last year, based on the increase we got, based on extra revenue. Maybe we're going to get more extra revenue. Maybe there's some things that we can still go back and talk about not having as expenses anymore. Kathy, you have any thoughts?
Oh, I'm sorry, daydreaming. Okay, we have a healthy fund balance. We're trying not to raise taxes. I feel that we went over everything nitpicking, and of course, like Nathan was just reading all the cuts that were made in the last few years to try to save. So, and then with losing Washington Township, I'm not sure where else we can go. So, other than taking it line by line by line by line, I kind of leave it up to the professionals to tell us what's needed, because even though I taught in the district, I don't know anymore what's needed, what programs have to be put in place, how much everything is costing more. And like Dr. Houck said about our reading program is no longer viable. It's done, so we have to do, that's another big expense for next year. So it's almost like, and I know myself when I go to the grocery store, oh gosh, it's awful. So there's all those things that I see just generally in public. Plus, I know from being on the board for 8 years now that things do come up and expenses do change. And we have tried everything in the last, since I've been on for 8 years, to not to raise taxes because they make me sick too. So unless somebody wants to come up with another way to, to cut back, I'm okay with using the fund balance, Carmen. I really am, because I see us as having a very healthy fund balance. Very healthy. And we don't want to go too high because then we get criticized from the state for having too much money set aside. So we just need to have that savings account there in case we really need it, but we have to keep that, we have to be smart about it. We have to be smart with our finances and know what is healthy and what's unhealthy. And I'm okay with it. This year I'm okay with it. I'm not saying I'm going to be okay with it every year because I don't want it to drop down, but this year I'm okay with it.
So I just want to know, do you guys look at the details? Do you look into it? And what, in your mind, constitutes, a good reason for raising a budget every year other than some increased costs? Do you not think a district like in our situation should stay pretty much around the same budget as much as we can? And find areas where maybe we've just gotten comfortable with these things and we don't need them.
Well, I kind of gauge it on the agenda too. If something comes up on the agenda, which we must pass, those items, if anything comes up that, you question, sometimes you question things, and why do we need this? When I first came on the board, I went over the Treasury report line by line. Not the Treasury report, bills paid. I guess that's the one that tells us what everything is. And I would go and I would talk to both the superintendent and our business manager at the time, and I said, why are we sending money to these people? What does it have to do with us? I questioned everything until I learned. And after I learned what all those expenses were for, and I realized that, yeah, we had to spend that money for that, for this child to go to this special school or for this funding, whatever else it could have been, I started to understand that there's a lot of things we just don't have any control over, that we have to spend money on. So now I go over the items, but I understand what I'm reading, and I know why we have to spend that money for those items. So again, then when anything, programs are put before us, we can question all we want about them and go from there. But I'm okay with what I've heard tonight. I'm okay with what I've heard the last few months. If not, I'm going to question it. I think it's terrible. Do I think we should raise taxes? No. But I know where we need to go to get more money, and that's what makes me angry. That they say up in Harrisburg that they're all behind better education. They want our scores to be better. But do they help us with any of that? No.
So not having the help that you want, I mean, I feel like it is our job to scrutinize how our taxpayer dollars are being spent. And that's what I'm trying to bring out right now is those conversations on how detailed have we been in the past. Maybe we've done a lot of cutting because we were able to. Maybe there's been years where there's just been a lot of things approved that we didn't need. Or, you know, I mean, last year, we say cuts, but we just had vacant positions too that we didn't fill, which is fine if we didn't need them. I'm not okay with cutting teachers and people who are necessary to keep our district running and are needed for our students. That's not what I'm talking about. And I don't want that thought going out, you know, that I'm sitting here saying, where can we cut teachers, programs, or anything like that? You know, I'm just talking about little ways that maybe the district has become, you know, really comfortable, relaxed, and looking at, you know, how we're spending our money. And it's okay if we ask those questions, you know, especially when we don't want to raise taxes or misuse collected tax money that's even sitting in a fund balance. It's still, we asked the taxpayers for that money.
And for me, using the fund balance is an issue based on the mere fact, I don't think we have gone and spent the time on this budget the way we should have gone through it line item by line item. There are people sitting in this room that are sitting on this board, and you have nice incomes. I know neighbors of mine who are in fact in their 70s who live on a small Social Security and small pension that maybe goes up a few $100s, if that, every year. They do not, and I am talking somebody who makes $28,000 to $30,000. And when you hit them with increased taxes every time, it hurts. It's one of those things where, me personally, I will say this. I know for a fact in the dumpsters of this school district, in the last 3 years, portable sewing machine was taken out of the dumpsters. It was taken home. Person went to Amazon, spent $20 getting a foot pedal. The lady now has a sewing machine that works. The electric ice cream shakers or machines that are made, you sell to, you know, to make ice cream in home, you know, the little electric thing that goes around. One of those was taken out of the dumpster, never used. The industrial commercial size McCormick ingredients for cooking, several of them taken out of a dumpster for use. Bags that were used for computer transport. When I say that, I'm just talking about your regular, you know, carry a bag. Brand new in the plastic. Probably about 10 of them came out of a dumpster. That's why I'm with the idea this budget needs to be gone through line by line. We need to find and we need to cut the money. That's all there is to it. That's why I won't go for a tax increase or using the fund balance. It's time we actually go down here bit by bit, each line go through it. Bring the department heads in. What are you spending the money on? Where can you cut? Just a few dollars. It's worth the time in the long run. That's all I got to say on it.
I think that turnover is very expensive as well. So I'm optimistic in the fact that I think we have a solid admin in place with Dr. Houck, Dr. Cartwright, Mr. Fluke, Mrs. Weaver. So hopefully, you know, they work as a team over the next several years, and like I'm hopeful for that, you know. But if those positions keep turning over, we're going to keep being faced with budget issues, I think. So, and I wanted to ask Mr. Pratt, is there any movement on the debt services? Because I see our debt payment is the third line item here. I don't know, Dr. Cartwright, if you know if that's interest only or is that principal and interest, the 6.9 million?
I'm not the CFOO for a reason. You really need to talk to Mrs. Weaver.
It was a shot in the dark. I don't know. I would assume it's both principal and interest because it's part of total expenditure.
Unless designated differently, I would assume the same.
It depends upon how she does her numbers. But
and to answer your question, there's no movement at all. on the case.
What, do we have an inkling of when that is? A year?
No. It's in the judge's hands.
What's next steps? What
Judge
are we
either-
waiting for?
The judge either has to schedule a hearing or make a determination based on the briefs that have been supplied by both parties.
Best case scenario, what are we looking at as far as paying off our debt service?
Best case scenario is we get all the money that we've asked for, which is in excess of.
Can you publicly say what that is?
Yeah, it's a public document. I believe we put in 12 million.
12 million? Do you know what our total debt service is right now?
No, I do not.
No? Okay.
Those numbers
That
are
might
those
be-
numbers are based on what Raymond James gave us.
I mean, if we get 12 million to pay towards our debt services, that's a lot of interest.
Sure.
That we won't incur, and that's a third line item. So that might be something that we can maybe look forward to in the next, not this budget year, but
You have
maybe
to
the
remember the debt and the, that we're dealing with is, we are under the statute and under the case law, you look at the year prior to the loss of the students.
Okay.
So you have to go back to 2021 for those numbers.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
You know, in regards to that, you might not agree with my opinion. However, I know that the Northern School District they're approving new buildings, and they have to add on.
Yep.
They're looking at some serious costs ahead of them, and I don't see us in the favor in this lawsuit. But yet, we've already spent well over $150,000 in attorney fees, and we don't know an end to it. So
Correct.
that there is a cost that we don't know when it's going to end, and I don't feel like that's responsible of us fiscally. So, I mean, would this
But
board
the
consider
the
just
downside
dropping the
of that-
case?
The downside of that is if you don't try pursuant to statute, then you've left money on the table possibly. The statute it requires that the judge is to determine debt and subsidy, so we need to be responsible enough to put in our best effort to request that based on past decisions, and therefore we have to go through those process to gain those monies.
How much more legal fees do you think would be involved in trying to capture any of that?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, because depending on what the judge does, if the judge decides to have a hearing, then you were talking cost associated with the hearing. If they just do if he just decides on the briefs, then it would be zero on the case, unless either side decides to do an appeal on the judge's decision. So.
Will that be brought to the board to make that decision on how to move forward? Okay.
Yes. But you have to remember, there's two boards associated with this, so if finds in our favor, Northern may file appeal, and we'd have to
I was gonna
participate,
say,
obviously.
it could go another,
Correct.
How many more years are the payments on this high school, do you roughly?
I don't know.
My feeling is that what we were dealt with a couple of years ago, they've said Dover was no hardship if the Washington Township left. And the judge ruled in the other school district and said it creates a hardship. So he didn't remove them. But I feel for the thing we were dealt, that we were making progress on trying to work out our problem. And you just can't solve some problems overnight.
Nathan, are you having an executive session after this?
I am. Okay, anybody else? Mr. DeShow?
I just wanted to give a shout out to the Dover robotics team for getting first place in Gettysburg.
Awesome. Mr. Rawhauser? Anything else from you, Mr. Rawhauser?
What?
Any other comments from you tonight? I know you got your eyes fixed.
No remaining comments.
I'll make my comment.
Okay. Kathy?
Okay. All right. I don't know if it was something I said the last time we had a meeting when I went on about transparency and how if you want to know what's being taught, it's all there on the Department of Education's website and what we're teaching, but now I'm hearing people saying that because it's the government, that the government is telling us what to teach, which to a point they are, but that they're imposing their values on our children. Like, what is that? I can't believe that people are actually believing this, because if you read the standards, you will know what's being taught in the schools. You will see that they're not imposing their values on our children. I'm so frustrated with this. And I remember when I taught third grade, I could list everything right now. We taught multiplication, division, fraction, three-dimensional figures, area, perimeter, probability, time, money, charts, vertices, angles, measurement, parts of speech, idioms. I could go on forever. That's all on the Pennsylvania State Standards. I don't know why people think that we're grooming children. I get so frustrated when people are out there throwing these opinions around, and that's all they are opinions, when the facts of what we are teaching is on the websites. It does not say the state wants to impress their indoctrination on your children. It doesn't say that, people. So, and also, another thing that I heard floating around, teacher unions are intimidating school board members by instilling fear, which keeps us from the day-to-day job of setting the budget, policies, overseeing the superintendent, approving curriculum. We're afraid to do this? I'm not afraid of any of this. I have no fear to pass policies. And to say that we're not reading them, I read everything. Okay, that just, I don't understand any of that. I'm frustrated. Yeah, there are strings attached from the Department of Education if we don't teach what they tell us to teach. There's strings attached. They're not going to give us our funding. But do you know that most of what our standards are, if you go and check on any of the other 49 states in the United States of America, you will see the basic same standards listed. First grade learns this. Kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. Every grade learns basically the same things in every state. The standards are very much the same. So why are we like paranoid and scared to death that people are teaching our children weird things?
Kathy, I don't know that you have seen some of the videos that circulated in the last school board election that I ran for, but people were irate at what was being handed out into the school libraries with certain books and whatnot. The parents came out in the masses. They're still doing it. They're showing the school boards that you approved this. You're allowing our kids to be taught this. Okay, and that comes through the school system. So it's happening.
Okay.
It is, and also I want to say this, not to be rude and interrupt, but what you're doing by re-commenting on somebody else's statements is not relevant to us here now. You need to take that to the person. And I don't mean to offend you by that, but that we're not here to debate what somebody else said.
But it is relevant because it's on my character as a school board member. So therefore, I want to make
That's
sure
their
that
opinion.
if people are
Take
out
it
there
to that
hearing
person.
this, that they know that that's not how it is. It's very important to educate the people that are listening.
You're educating based on your feelings and opinions right now. What he did is the exact
No,
same.
the standards are right there, Carmen. They're right there.
Those are
It's not my
state
opinion.
standards, but that's not happening in every classroom. Across this state,
Okay, I
there
rest
are
my case.
things being taught to our kids, the parents are uncovering, and they're bringing to school boards. There's much evidence out there.
And Kathy, let me make just one statement. If everything's being taught equally, basically
Okay,
from
now
state
David,
to
I'm sorry, I
state,
can't hear you. Speak up.
what I'm talking about is if everything is being taught equally across from state to state, you wouldn't have that mess in Baltimore and in Chicago with their school systems. With the high rate of failure, kids who can't read to any kind of grade level, can't do math to any kind of grade level. I'll just say that right now. It may sound good to say it's in state to state and district to district, but it's not there.
But do you realize the two cities you have spoken about, Baltimore and Chicago, the type of child that goes through many of those school systems, because they come from an inner city of so many other issues that are going on that, and granted, we have some here, we do, we just don't have them to the degree those two cities have. So you can't equate us to them. It's still the same curriculums. It's what we're teaching our children. We're not teaching them these horrible. And I realize there's stuff out there, Carmen. Please don't get me wrong. I realize there's videos out there. But you have to be able, that's why we're teaching critical thinking, because people have to be able to take what they're seeing and tear it apart and understand what part of what they're seeing is true and what is all fabricated. We have to teach our children that so that when they get out of school, and in the library books, no, I want those books because I want my child to read. I'm just using an example. I want my child to read them. If you don't want your child to read them, then you go tell your child not to read them. It's that simple.
Hold on, are you saying you want every book out there available to our kids, regardless of what the parents think and feel about the content?
The school needs to decide, the librarians need to decide what is appropriate. They read the, I'm not even sure what it's called, but they read the library journals to know what books are available and what are appropriate for schools. And I want my child, well, my children are out of school, but when they graduate, I want them to be able to understand what is out there in the world, because once they're out, they're on their own.
But do you realize that this has become a hot topic because parents are upset that their kids are being subjected to things that they, first of all, didn't approve of, are unaware of sometimes, and some of this material isn't appropriate for adults?
But that's what I'm saying. The librarians need to make that judgment call. And if there's a book that you don't want your child to read, you say to your child, don't bring that home. I don't want you to read that. I don't care if you have to write a note to the librarian. I don't know if there's some kind of a checkout system that they can boop, 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 and you're, oh, sorry, you can't have that book. I don't know. All I'm saying is don't make judgment calls based on what I want. You want me to make judgment calls based on what you want. But don't make them on what I want.
Okay, so there's a movie rating system out there, and it's like your G, PG, PG-13, whatnot. Sure. But we don't have that for books. And so we're leaving it up to just a few individuals in the district to decide whether or not a book is appropriate for children.
I consider the librarian to be an educated, qualified librarian that knows how to do that. That's why she
that has their own
degree.
Opinions, but why not have the input of the community as well? Like, we need a better process in place.
Because I don't want a community deciding what I think is
found a book this year in our library that was completely inappropriate for children. They're in there.
I get it can happen. I get it, but I don't agree.
Kathy, you would have been upset at this book coming home. I'm just telling you.
Possibly.
I have pictures of
It was removed for a reason, and that's happening with parents not knowing and realizing.
But then give me that opportunity to make that judgment call. If you're pulling it out and I don't have the chance.
Okay, but it's taxpayer dollars that are buying these books.
The library system in York County went on TV and said, do you know we cannot keep those 2 books in our libraries across the county? Because now all the kids want to read them. Well, so, okay, so you're going to let your child go to the library and maybe pull it out of there? Out of the public library?
I think that's the right of every family, yeah. But if you're
right. That's exactly right.
But you're talking about a community-funded process building here. We have people in this community who would be disgusted at the things that would end up in our libraries and that would be approved by our librarians. So we need a process in place.
They have that right to be disgusted, but maybe I wouldn't be. And I don't know that. I haven't read the books. I haven't looked at them. I don't know that. But all that I'm saying is I need that opportunity to make that decision. Please don't make it.
That's when you make the decision, you go to the public library. But our school needs to protect our children's minds. That's how you.
Job. That's your job. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be. I get frustrated because I don't understand why you have the right. I trust the librarian to let her put the book in there. If I want my child to have it, then my child can have it. If you don't want the librarian to put it in there, that's your choice. But you can't override my choice. You take care of your child. I'll take care of my child.
I think it comes. I think it's. I understand, but to me, it's bigger than choice. Yeah. It's about the children and how they're being influenced and what's going to happen. You know what? When we talk about mental health and these kids' issues, and we're going to allow any book to come in and just get in their heads.
Yeah, and we're never going to agree because you have your philosophy, I have mine, and that's the way it is. But I have said what I need to say. You have said what you need to say, and you have that right. You have that right to say what you need to say, and I have my right. So that's just how I feel.
I just want to say about the book that's in question, I want to commend our administration for acting very swiftly and seeing the inappropriateness of that book and responding to that very, very quickly. So we do have, like, there, you know, I just appreciate that. I just want to say that that was taken care of so that their parents aren't concerned about us talking about that. And I have pictures of it, Kathy, I'll show you. So I think we do need to be on alert, and that's why I was saying about the study island and stuff. We just have to be on alert, you know, of some things that might trickle down into our district that we don't know about. And that library book was put in there years and years and years ago, 10 years ago, you know, and just happened upon. I don't even know how many kids read it before the student caught it. So I think it's just being responsible and being, you know, just being engaged. And I don't think anybody sitting on this board today, or probably in the future, at least in our district, is being malicious. We are here because we love the children and we want them to get a good education. And we're here to watch out for our taxpayer dollars. That's why every single one of us is sitting here. So we just need to keep that in mind when we're talking about people that are sitting around this table or people that are going to be running for school board. I know some of your comments specifically address maybe some things that are being discussed by those people. I think everybody's very well-intentioned. I don't think anybody's being malicious at all.
And that's why I was very careful not to say who they came from or where the source at all. I was
Yep.
very careful, just the community, the community.
While we're with you, Mrs. Meese, you want to go next?
That was mine.
Okay. Mrs.
Thank
Britton.
you. Thank you.
Anything? And Mr. Wolverton, anything else? Okay.
I just wanted to let Mr. Wolverton know that I looked up that number. We have approximately 120 students that our ESL teachers have on their caseload. They are varying degrees of English language proficiency from not at all to they're doing pretty well. But I wanted to get back to you, 120.
Okay, then I just had a few things to add. I know, Mrs. Whitmer, we will remove PBIS and PSBA from the consent agenda for next week. I did want to follow up, though. At a previous meeting, Mr. Wolverton asked about Mr. Kindig's interest and what it would take to raise the earned income tax rate. So I wanted to walk you through the highlights of that process right now. Under the Taxpayer Relief Act of 2006, the following would need to occur. Excuse me. First, the school district, at the direction of the board, would need to appoint a local tax study commission. Next, this commission would need to hold at least one public hearing and make its non-binding recommendation to the board in a separate public meeting. After this, the school district, at the direction of the board, would need to follow multiple steps to adopt a resolution authorizing a tax referendum question to be placed on the ballot in a municipal election. This referendum would seek voter approval to, and I quote, levy, assess, and collect an earned income and net profits tax authorized under Section 321B2 or a personal income tax authorized under Section 321C2 for the purpose of annually funding homestead and farmstead exclusions, end quote. The voters would then, in that municipal election, either approve or deny that referendum. Any new tax assessment could be implemented in July of the year following the election. All told, this process takes about a year and a half. So if the new board that will be seated in December is interested in raising the earned income tax rate, it would appear that they would need to begin the process immediately upon taking office. So that is the process, and that can be addressed when the new board is in place. Another item that I wanted to address earlier today, I received an email from a member of the public, and I'd like to read portions of that email to you right now. A very concerning issue has come up. During a WSBA Morning News podcast today, a school board candidate, and I'm taking names out for everybody, compared the education in Dover to the 1930s Germany. And we all know what that disparagement means. While I, for one, am a strong supporter of the First Amendment, this kind of rhetoric is disturbing that Dover education is being compared to Nazi Germany. There is a lot more than just a lack of civility and derogatory name-calling here. It is filled with symbolism and implying that in Dover, professional educators are, in fact, teaching children to be anti-Semitic, and in Dover schools, hate is being taught based on religious belief and class by professional educators. That is what was contained within this email from this person in the public today. So all I will say about this is, well, I certainly cannot infer what this person intended to imply, whether or not the teachers are teaching hate and anti-Semitic values of Germany in the 30s. I do know that in the community, words matter and perception is reality. The person who wrote this email to me heard it that way, as did others who have contacted me. And it's important that we as a district not carelessly throw out accusations that harm the reputation of our school. One of the hardest things to restore is a reputation, and I ask everyone to not label our district inaccurately and unfairly with the reputation that our students will carry with them as they go out into the world. Also in this same interview, the individual implied that our teachers take 3 weeks before the state PSSA assessment period to teach the students what is on the exam and give them the answers. Considering that the teachers are not even given access to the test materials until the day the tests are administered, this is literally impossible. They don't know the questions and therefore the answers until the tests begin. Anybody involved with the administration of the state assessments must strictly follow an 88-page handbook, and I've seen this handbook as my wife has read it at home for prepping for tests. And this outlines the test processes and procedures. 3 of those pages are devoted strictly to test security, which involves storing the materials, certifying that all procedures are being followed. It's a very intense process. So just wanted to clarify that for the public knowledge. And then speaking of our tests, I did want to thank Dr. Hauk tonight for providing with those information about the facts as they relate to the test scores tonight. There's obviously continual misinformation that is spread in this community about it, and I think it's important that we saw those numbers and have those numbers available to us. I remember when Dover's scores were at the bottom of the pack. I remember when our middle school was last in the county, and to see that they were 5th is amazing to me. We've come a long way with this, and that's thanks to our administrators, our professional staff, and our support staff. So kudos to them for a job well done, and of course there's still work to do, but those successes deserve to be recognized. Then finally, it is Teacher Appreciation Week, so I want to take a moment to recognize the hard work and dedication of our professional educators who spend every day in their classrooms molding our next generation of doctors, lawyers, engineers, entrepreneurs, welders, carpenters, and farmers. I know that the last few years have probably been among the most difficult in your careers. The amount of hatred directed toward you by those who have no idea what you actually do in your classrooms and only believe what they hear on TV or see on social media has been extraordinary. Many people seem to think that just because they spent time as a student in a classroom, they're suddenly an expert in how to teach. I know I've spent plenty of time in a dentist chair, but I am no expert in how to do a root canal. So we need to trust you, our professionals who have advanced degrees in how to teach our children. So to all the teachers in this district, I want to say thank you. I want to thank you for being the true professionals that you are. I want to thank you for serving as a mentor and role model to my daughter during her time here, as she has followed your steps now and is going to be a teacher herself. Thank you for standing strong, holding your chins up high, and for doing your best for every student, every day, whatever it takes. So with that, I did want to ask that, again, we will have an executive session immediately following the meeting. I would ask the audience to immediately clear the room so that we can have our meeting at that point. We will be discussing several items there. So with that, I'll move to adjourn this meeting.
I have one more comment to make. Since you just decided to use our school board platform room to bring up issues in our community, which I don't think that was good discernment by both you and Kathy, because
You
right
bring the
now,
issues up yourself too, so we are
no,
entitled
but
to
we
say
get
what we need to
many
say, Carmen.
emails. Nate, we get many emails in our, and not all of them are being read here in this room. You used your input tonight from an email to persuade, and I don't think that's fair. The person who said those statements, he has to answer to the community. This is a school board race, and you're doing nothing fairly by committing this moment to persuading the listeners. In fact, if we had no video right now, it would just be us in this room having a school board meeting, and you never have said that. But you're trying to put information out there to the listeners right now, and that's not what we do. We're not doing that. That's not our
I
business.
think we're standing up for our
Let
school district.
them have their
That's what
race,
we're doing. We're standing
and we
up
need to stay out of it.
Things that are being said that aren't true. So I think we're standing.
But that's on
I'm very
them.
proud of
That's
Dover
on
School
them.
District.
They have to
Very
answer
proud.
to that.
Very proud. But people don't know where to get the truth, so they don't know that.
They go to them. They come to them. Town hall meetings, you know, that kind of thing, like you did when we ran and you wrote your article. That kind of thing, That's how you get to know people. You ask your questions to the people.
Okay.
But this is not supposed to be a platform for persuasion.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Nate, did you, when Kathy wrote that article about us that were running then, did you go and get on a soapbox about it
I've certainly
there were
expressed my
completely
opinion
inappropriate
in many
comments in
different
that
ways.
newspaper article.
I have expressed my opinion in many different ways. I'm just sharing my thoughts and defending this district from information that is put out there.